Yeah, so old school music, right? We talk about it
Yes.
all the time. What do we say?
Yes.
What do I always say? 1,000 years from now, what are they going to be playing? Are they going to be playing whatever freak show rapper? No, they're not going to be playing that. They'll still be playing the Temptations. They'll still be playing the Supremes. They'll still be playing Gladys Knight and the Pips. They'll still be playing Aretha Franklin. They'll still be playing the Stones. Still be playing the Allman Brothers.
All right. Hey there, como se va and que pasa? I'm your host, Jay Bodwin, and welcome to In the Pocket with Jay Bo. Today, our episode features a gentleman that is all about physical fitness and a fan of the old school way of doing things in life. He has an associate's degree in occupational safety and health and industrial hygiene, and a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology from Lamar University, and an MBA from the Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. Very accomplished academically. He has worked in the medical devices field industry for 38 years. He is a fourth degree black belt in Taekwondo, a personal trainer, and enjoys writing as well. He was born in the Big Easy, my hometown of New Orleans, and raised in Port Arthur, Texas. I'm talking about today's guest, Mr. Terry Wayne Broussard. He is a father of two sons and a grandfather of four beautiful granddaughters and a handsome grandson. He and I are going to be talking about how we value the old school way of doing things, where we think some of these traditions should be kept alive for future generations. We're honored to have him here as our guest today. So with that, welcome to In the Pocket, Big Terry.
Glad to be here, J-Bo. Let's go.
All right. So how you doing, man?
I'm good.
All right. We appreciate you being here today. And before we start, ladies and gentlemen, today's episode is sponsored by one of Terry's favorite bands, the Bayou Junction Band, as you see right here. Terry, as a custom we have here with In the Pocket with J Bo, I like to ask my guests a few icebreaker questions to just kind of get the mood relaxed and flowing here a little bit. So if that's all right with you, we'll get started.
That's perfectly fine.
All right. And as the late, great Jackie Gleason would say, and away we go. Talking about old school. Question number one. What is your favorite old-time TV show?
For me, it would be Mission Impossible.
Mission
number one.
Impossible. That's a
Number
first
two
one.
would be Star Trek, the original that came out in '66.
Oh yeah, with William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, and Michelle
Absolutely.
Nichols.
Forrest
Oh
Kelly,
yeah, man.
Michelle Nichols, all of them.
That was must see TV, man. When I was a kid, and that was
Absolutely.
reruns, you know.
Absolutely.
And what was the Mission Impossible?
Mission Impossible.
Man, I know you're a few years older than me, but my grandfather used to love that show. When I'd be over at his house, and as a kid, all I remember is that line, you know, that the explosive line going across the
Yep.
What'd you like most about Mission Impossible?
Well, there were several things, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I like the mixed match of the cast. It was the
Yes.
first time we really saw a woman in a capable role on TV where she wasn't just field dressing
Right.
or eye candy. We also
Right.
saw a very accomplished black man who wasn't just a butler or a servant. He was a
True.
full participant in the show. And I really like that. As you can recall, coming up in the 60s, you know, things were turbulent and the rigidity of the 50s was still very much in play. So here we were, every week we got to see a brand new episode at a different exotic locale of the amazing things that these people were capable of. And so that's what I liked about it.
I guess kind of close to what Mod Squad was like, actually, a little bit.
Well, yeah, so you could say it was probably the precursor to Mod Squad.
Yeah. And who was the main? I think there was three or four main stars for Mission Impossible. Who was the white guy with the white hair?
Yeah, that was Peter Graves.
Peter Graves. His brother is Matt Dillon from Gunsmoke. Did you know that?
Yes. Yeah, I knew that.
Because Gunsmoke's one of my favorite shows. But no, I definitely remember Mission Impossible. My paternal grandfather used to really like that show. And I was just a little kid at that time, but he watched that show religiously.
Absolutely.
So that's a good one, man. Second question. What advice would you give your younger self if you could go back and just talk to young Terry there for a minute? What advice would you give yourself?
Well, the first thing I do is I tell that big head boy to pull his head out of his butt. I tell him he's not all that. Yes, he just graduated from college, but he's got a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I would tell him very seriously is whatever you come up with, follow it and pursue it as though your life depends on it, because it does.
Good point. Good point. Well, if I could go back and talk to myself, I would definitely use that first statement you used on myself. That's for damn sure. But no, that's great advice there, and good comment there, Terry. Third question: tell us something about you that many of your friends might be surprised to hear.
Well, the funniest thing about me, the most paradoxical thing about me is that
Hmm.
despite my tough exterior, I am an absolute abject softy when it comes to young girls and older women.
Yes.
It's yes or yes, ma'am, and it's never no or no, ma'am.
Good point. Good point.
But
One
we,
thing,
anybody that had grandmothers like we had grandmothers, you can understand that,
absolutely. And you had two sons, right?
right?
And I have two sons. So we didn't raise daughters. And Becky, my wife, can tell you that when we're performing, and if there's a little girl that comes by the stage or something, that's my best friend there for the next 2 to 3 hours. And I can tell you, it's one of the most fulfilling things. And I think I call them the mood killers, but it's a term of endearment. Okay. But like you said, when I see the little girls, man, it's just that's my best friend. I want to do everything in the world to make them smile, and I treat the elderly ladies the same way. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. I'll gravitate to them when we're in a crowd or a restaurant before I talk to anybody else. Usually,
Absolutely,
race,
absolutely.
color, creed don't matter. But if they're older ladies, I'm the one right there. Yes, ma'am. Opening the door, helping them out, this and that. I'm the one doing it.
Tell you a funny story about that, if you don't mind.
Please, please.
Okay, so I was in San Antonio on business, and I had to meet some people for lunch. And
Okay.
as I was getting out of my car, there was an old lady being dropped off by her daughter as I was walking toward the restaurant. And I was with some younger guys. They were behind me, and I didn't say anything to them. All I did was walk up to the car, open the door for the little old lady, and I stuck my arm out. I didn't say a word. She
Right.
got out of the car. She took my arm. I escorted her in. I didn't say a word. I pulled her chair out. She sat down. I pushed it in. I turned around and walked back. When I got to my table, this guy said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Shut up. Y'all ain't raised right. I don't want to hear anything else about it." Because they didn't even have the presence of mind. They didn't have the training that you escort an older lady. You don't have to say to her, "Ma'am, would you take my arm?" You don't have to say, "Ma'am, I'm going to slide." She knows that.
Yes. Yes.
And so it just that's a perfect example as we're going to transition into old school later on. That's lacking in a lot of these kids these days. The fundamental structural knowledge that was drummed into you and I when we were young boys. These kids don't even have a concept of it.
And it's funny you say that because I'm sure you did because I know I did with my boys, and they'll tell you to this day, especially an older lady. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. You better be in front, opening up that door, and everything else, opening that car door, everything.
Without a doubt.
And because I can hear my mom's voice, my mother's passed about 17, 18 years ago, and I can still hear her voice clear as day. Boy, you better get up there and open up that door. But again, that's the training, the rearing when you're young, and
Absolutely.
we're definitely going to get into some of that. Okay,
Okay.
we're going to have some good talk about old school. We're going to have some hard talk about old school, but we're going to have some old school talk. Next question: what is your favorite musician, or who is your favorite musician and group, and why? That was one of the ones I wanted to ask you the most.
Yeah, well that's very easy for me. There's never been any doubt about it. My favorite musician was Prince.
Okay, what turned you on so much to Prince? Then
His first
the
his first
obvious with a lot of people.
his first album, okay, he wrote all the music, played all the instruments, sang all the melodies, lead, background, tertiary background himself without
Right.
anybody's help. Now, I understand people think that Mozart was a genius, and he was, and that Beethoven was a genius, and he was. But Prince was the modern day iteration of what Beethoven might have been, because Beethoven couldn't sing, Beethoven couldn't dance. And like people like to talk about this contrast between Michael Jackson and Prince, there is no competition. Michael Jackson could sing and dance. He could not write music. He didn't play an instrument. So there's no competition.
Yeah, to me, it's an apple and an orange there, and I totally agree with you. I see Michael Jackson as more of an entertainer, and I see Prince as more of a pure musician slash entertainer, because Prince was a little more diverse, but Prince was a perfectionist, because he had some serious musicians in his band, especially in the beginning. And when he had Des Dickerson and Andre Simone, those guys, that's some talent, man.
Well,
And
he was prolific.
Doc, and I'm
Look at
talking
near
before Wendy and Lisa and all that.
right, but look near the end of his life when he would show up at jam sessions unannounced, and he would light it up. People would be amazed. A lot of people were amazed that he was that good a guitar player, but they didn't understand. He was the real deal when he started.
Yeah, when I saw him shred to that old Beatles song, they had that. Oh, man, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's an old George Harrison song. But they had Tom Petty up there, Jeff Lynne was up there, Prince
I,
came up there,
I
man,
saw that
just took
same one.
over. And
Yep.
then I saw him a few years before he passed in a concert on YouTube, and he's a big fan of the old funk hits from the '70s. He's a big Sly Stone guy. He likes he did a Play That Funky Music um, cover, and it was just freaking amazing. And if you haven't seen it before, it's on YouTube. But look up Prince with Play That Funky Music and Hollywood Swingin'. He did a
Oh,
combination of them from Kool and the Gang. And brother, I'm telling you, it was off the charts,
no, I've seen it.
ridiculous good.
Yeah,
You
I've
know.
seen it.
But again, playing that old school stuff, man. You know. So we, like I said, we're gonna get on that. All right, this is one of my favorite ones to ask everybody. If you could go back in time and have a conversation with a person from the past. It could be a family member. It could be, I don't know, an entertainer. It could be someone that you admired from reading a book or anything like that. And they would want to talk back to you. Who would it be?
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Yeah,
I got Martin Luther King recently, but I have not got Malcolm X.
yeah. No.
Talk to me about Malcolm X, because that is one controversial figure.
Well, Malcolm X or Detroit Red or Malcolm Little, as he was, Malcolm Little
Hmm.
was his government name, Detroit Red was his street name, and Malcolm X was his Muslim name. You're talking about a man who traversed the journey of ignorance and drug use
Yeah.
to enlightenment via religion, and then even enlightenment above that about the human condition. The thing that I would want to talk to him about would be I would want to ask him, tell me how you really felt when you found out what Elijah Muhammad was doing, contrasted to what you knew was going to happen to you when you exposed that. That would be the
Right.
question I would want to ask him because he knew the moment he spoke out against that guy, he was a dead man.
That's the $1 million question. You're right. That's the $1 million question.
That's the question I would want to know. But then I would ask the same thing of Medgar Evers. You
Yeah.
knew you were in Mississippi. You knew you were going to be shot. Yet you kept doing that. How did you justify knowing that you were going to leave your wife and kids behind because they were going to kill you, yet your imperative drove you forward without fear, without reservation? Talk to me about that. That's what I would want to ask him. And the same thing for Martin Luther King. And the same thing for Arthur Ashe. And over and over and over throughout history, men who have faced down the risks inherent in what they want to do and say, I'm going to do it anyway, not consequences be damned. No matter the consequences, I'm going to do it anyway. Those are the people that I would want to talk to.
Yeah, it just for such a turbulent time to be able to do the things they did against tremendous odds. And totally agree with what you said. You either have to be looking over your shoulder every minute, and if you're doing that, you're not going to be able to put the energy into what your influence is and what your goals are. You just have to go straight forward. And those guys did go straight forward without looking over their shoulders. And
Yeah, and I'm going to take it a
unfortunately,
step
they
beyond that,
succumbed.
J-Bo. Their execution was a certainty. I mean, they knew that. I mean, let's remember what times we're talking about. Late
Yeah,
50s,
oh
early
yeah.
60s in America. Men were still being lynched without charges being brought. Most of the time it was the Klan. Most of the time they were the policemen by day, Klansmen by night. So these
Hmm.
guys knew what was going to happen to them. Yet they risked it all, did what they had to do. They were all killed early. And that's, like I said, that
Yeah.
would be the question that I would ask. How did you justify in your mind that you were going to have to leave this family that you cared so much about because you had something that you cared about even more? And while you were willing to risk your personal safety, how did you justify in your mind risking your family's personal safety? Because all of them got their houses firebombed, all of them got
Oh,
shot at. So that would be my question. Because frankly, J-Bo, honestly, while I'm hard headed and stubborn, if I'm just risking me, I can do that all day and every day. I don't care what
right.
anybody thinks. But I don't think that even I, as strong as I like to think I am, would have the guts. And I'll be straight and honest with you. I don't think I'd have the guts to risk my family. That would be the question for me.
And that's a risk. That risk is always out there
That
because
is a risk.
it's almost like it's almost like a mafia hit's coming, and it's not just coming for you. It's
That's the
most likely going
problem.
to come to
It's
the
not
people
just
that
coming
care
for
about
you.
you. Yeah, it's not just coming for you. And I told Becky and I were having a conversation about that a while back. We had watched some movie or TV show, and it's with a policeman, but I'll just say the policeman and the bad guys in the movie, how it was portrayed. And the bad guys didn't stop at the policeman. They went after everybody. And
No.
again, it's like you said, it's not just you. There's going to be collateral damage on things like that. And we're not just talking about the things they went through when they were making their speeches and making their points with things. It's just you don't know what the wife had to deal with going to the grocery store, or the son had to deal with going to the playground, or going, school, depending on what school they go to. Back then, it was it was unfortunate for a lot of people that lived during that time that things the way they were back then. But I remember one thing you had told me, because Terry and I have been going to the gym, same gym, for about, heck, what, 4 or 5 years, up to 5 years, I think now, Terry. And we talk every day. And the conversation can go from anywhere from music to food. Now, we talk about food a lot. And then, but talking about relations with different cultures and different races. And I'll never forget a thing you told me about 4 years ago. We had a long, kind of deep conversation at the end of the workout. And you said, you know what, J-Bo, we're going to go out in this world and change things one day and one person at a time. It takes people like us to do that. It just resonated with me when you told me that. And it just, I still remember like it was yesterday when you said that. And it just, it made a lot of sense. And I know it came from your heart when you said it.
It
So
absolutely did.
it's obviously by your answer. And I can tell you, man, you know, one of my favorite things to say at the gym because people will see us talking, I'm like, man, we're family. Can't you see the resemblance here? But again, in the 65, who could ever imagine us doing something like this right now, get along like brothers, and would have each other's back through thick and thin, and being able to do something like this? So, those guys didn't die in vain because it's not just us doing it. I know there's thousands of other people doing it, but it's up to us. Like you said, we spread the word and we help out with things like that.
More than that, we are the living examples of what we talk about.
Exactly. Yep. Totally
What
agree.
happened? What happened? Let's talk. Again. You said we were going to keep this real, so let's
We're
keep it
keeping
real.
it real, baby. Yep.
What happened when you had your incident? When that bar fell on your chest, and you
Oh,
told
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
what was the first thing I told you? J
If you
Bo, we're
don't
gonna
get
go through
up your
this
butt and
together.
go to the hospital, I'm coming over there and bringing you myself.
That's right. And
Yep.
then when you were, a little concerned about it, I said, Jay, we'll go through this together. I meant it when I said it.
Well, I was sitting I was at home, and man, I was hurting. And for people that don't know what happened, I'm sure I was doing bench, and I hadn't done bench in a while. And the bar in my right, the barbell on my left hand hit a rung coming up and just came right out of my hand and just flat out on my chest about this far. And man, I lost my breath. I was grasping for air, couldn't get it. It was a Friday morning, hardly anybody at the gym, and I had to turn over on my side to get my breath. And this literally took about 5 to 10 minutes. And I've had the wind knocked out of me before, but not like this. And I was in some serious hurt. I still can't believe I don't even remember walking to the truck, and I do remember getting in the truck and just getting my grip on things and drove back home. I even woke up Becky. I said, "Hey, I dropped the barbell about this much on my chest." She's like, "You're okay?" I'm like, "Man, I don't know. I don't know." And I don't know why. I messaged you. I called you. I don't remember. I think I called you, and I said, "Terry, man, I don't know what I did, brother, but man, something ain't right." And it did, man. It was a blink of an eye. J-Bo, you get your butt, you get Becky to bring you over to that hospital, that ER right now, or I'm going to come over there and get you myself and bring you myself. And I ain't taking no for an answer. And that's about all it took to convince me. So, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Brother, if you had something happen at 3 in the morning, you call me and Jay's behind's over there in 2 seconds. And when I talk in the third person, I'm being serious. But I don't even need to tell you that. You know that,
Exactly.
and that's the kind of thing, I'm very, very proud of. From the last podcast I did with Mike Ned, when I had a question for him of if there was one thing you could do to change the world, or something like that, what would it be? And he goes, man, to get rid of the hate. No more hate. We got to live together. We got to get along together. And there's a commonality, and all people have to do sometimes is just sit down and talk. Old school, Terry. Sit down and talk.
But none of that, none of this surface crap that's seen all too common today. People
Right.
don't have meaningful discussions because everybody's wearing the veneer of affability. Oh, hey Jay, how you doing? Oh yeah, yeah, okay, okay, I'm good. You good? Okay, bye. No, man, how you really doing? What you really got going on? And then will someone call you out when you're doing wrong? You don't have to answer that question because you know the answer
You
to that.
got that right. She's in the other room right now.
Exactly.
You
But
know
the
that.
point is, people don't have real conversations, and no expansion can occur until you have real, honest conversations. And the thing about real, honest conversations, sometimes they're uncomfortable. Most times they're uncomfortable. But after that happens, you find you've expanded yourself. So, to your friend who said, "Let's stop the hate," I would add that I wish if I could change one thing about the world, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, you've got to go spend a year in another country. Pick one. I don't care which one, but pick one that doesn't speak your language so that you have to be the odd person out and you have to learn how to navigate your way in their country.
Right.
And I promise you, if everybody had to do that, a lot of the hate would go away because all of a sudden you'd realize I'm not all that. America ain't all that.
Right.
There's other people in this world, there's other places in this world. We're just a small piece of the wheel. But too many people don't have that perspective.
Well, that's the people I think live in those closed in boundary things, man, with too much limitations on things and not open minds.
Well, it's the
And
prison of their own mind.
right.
They have everything they think they need. They've been everywhere they think they want to go, and they haven't left 20 miles outside of the place they were born. And they quickly deem everything outside of that 20-mile boundary, that's the bad place. I don't need to go there. Well,
Not
no,
a different place. It's a bad place.
it's a bad place, not a different
Right,
place. It's a
right.
bad place. You see, because it's just like the demonization that happens when human beings fight each other. You
Mhm.
know, I don't want to fight Jay the person. I want to fight Jay the animal, the subhuman person, because if I can dehumanize you, I can do anything to you. But if I got to see you as a human being, well, we're not really trained to treat other human beings like that. We're just not. And that is why I have always said, and again, as we talk, we bounce around. But I have always said that you can't turn human beings into hunters and killers of other human beings and expect them to come back normal. That's part of the problem with all these veterans. You can turn them into a cold-blooded killer. Hey, that's not a problem. Try turning them back into a human being. Then you're
That's the
going to have
challenge.
problems.
That's the challenge. You know. Well, I can tell you, my uncle on my father's side, my dad's older brother. I got a picture of him right up here. I think I may have told you about him before. He was 101st Screaming Eagles during Korea and Vietnam. He actually supported the Little Rock School to integrate the school. He was on the cover of Life magazine back then. And the picture I have right here is with Lyndon Johnson pinning a medal on him. I have one of his at least 4 Purple Hearts I know he's got. Well, he passed away about 6 or 7 years ago. That's basically what he was. He was a trained killer. And he was a war hero, came back, after 25, 27 years in the Army. And they don't have all the support they have now. And he was challenged. It's not a switch you can turn on and off with almost everybody. I'm one of the few people he talked to about a few things because I served in the Navy, not even 1/100th of what he did. But he had 4 boys, good athletes, everything, but none of them spent time in the military. He didn't talk to any of them about anything. And one of the first things he told me in their training was exact parallel to what you just said. They dehumanized the enemy for him because you have to dehumanize them for him and his peers to go out there and do the things that they had to do. Because if it was the same people they would see at a park or a ball game, you're not going to have that same mindset.
No.
So, I 100% see what you're saying. And, unfortunately, that led to a lot of suicides alcoholisms, drugs, just some really bad stuff because the transition back. I think the way that they train the guys to dehumanize that enemy probably goes a little bit quicker than trying to do a 180 with it to bring them back. And I mean, you've seen movies about it, you've seen documentaries about it. I saw it with my uncle. I mean, he lied about his age. He went in, I think, at 17, and that's all he did. That in boxing. Well, you get out at 38, 40, early 40s, ain't a whole lot of employment opportunities for somebody at that age, during that time, with only that experience. What's he going to do? And not only that, that's not even talking about the flashbacks and all this kind of other stuff. I've heard a couple things from his daughter, wonderful, wonderful lady, my cousin Stephanie, and just tough stuff, man. I can't even imagine it.
He told me that the most difficult thing for him, well, there were two things actually: walking through the jungle and snakes crawling up your leg, and not being able to move because it would give away your position to the VC. And then the other thing that got him, which really was the thing that messed him up more than anything else, was having to shoot children, because the VC would arm them with hand grenades or something, and yeah, and you had to kill these kids or they were going to kill you.
Right.
And look, I don't care who you are, okay, unless you're some kind of serial killer, killing children is a hard line.
Yeah. That's when you got to make choices that's going to affect you the rest of your life. And unfortunately, it hit a lot of people back then. And I know there are a lot of them are older now, and not so many are around anymore. But again, that whole time, man, that was just a tough time. That was just a tough time. But
Yep.
I think look at Mark Essex back with the New Orleans in 1973 or whatever. At the Howard Johnsons. And if people in the audience that don't know that story, look up Mark Essex, 1973. I think it was December in New Orleans, and Vietnam veteran, uh, good young man, and things happened to him over there, and he came back, and he went on a killing spree in downtown New Orleans, and they eventually ended up taking him down. But man, it's just but there's story after story after story like that, and unfortunately, it's again that just all goes back to just a very very tough time in the country.
Absolutely.
And just, we think our blessings that we're in a time that we are now. But if it wasn't for a lot of people back then, and, World War II and prior to that, and different cultures have different historical perspectives on it, which all needs to be respected, in my opinion. And, it led to where, again, we're able to do the things that we're doing here right now. And, I'm proud that we can do that. I'm happy that we can do that. Man, I'm proud as hell that you're one of my friends, and I hope you feel the same way. And, when I go to the gym, we'll walk across 100 yards to go hug each other, when we see each other. But to me, that's a friendship, you know.
Absolutely.
And to me, I always tell my wife, because she's like, oh, you got a bunch of friends. And it's really narrowed down a lot in the last 10 years. But, I always look at a true friend as who is somebody that I can get in the foxhole with, that could have my back. And I'm telling you, Big T, you definitely one of those guys to me. And that's ain't a whole lot of them nowadays, but you definitely one of those cats.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
And I hope you feel, reciprocal with that with me, because if you don't know, I'm telling you right now, you got that in me. So,
No, it didn't take me long to figure that out, J-Bo.
you know that. So, well, man, let's I want the audience to get to know about you a little bit more before we dig into the main subject here. So, tell me about your childhood a little bit. And you were born in New Orleans, man, and I know you guys ended up moving to Southeast Texas. So, talk to me about being born in New Orleans, a little bit about your parents, and just things y'all did as a kid when you were growing up and stuff. Talk to me about that.
Don't have any memories of growing up in New Orleans. I was still an infant when they moved here. My parents met at a dance, which is quite an interesting story, because my dad was the worst dancer in the history of the world. The man had 3 left feet, and I mean it was horrible. It was horrible. But they met at a dance, and I don't know what she saw in him that made them have a date, but something clicked, and they stayed married for until she died, which was 60. They were married for 61 years.
Wow,
Uh,
nice, nice.
but my childhood in Texas, if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't change a single thing.
Right.
My time, we got on our bicycles, we rode all over the neighborhood. I tell everybody, I may have even told you, and I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but I remember like it was yesterday. I was 28 years old before I figured out that all those old women we used to laugh at because they didn't have anything to do. I was 28 before I figured out those women were watching us.
Right.
And I learned it the hard way. So in Port Arthur, where I lived, was maybe 5 miles away from this place that I ended up on my bicycle. And I'm just riding my bike. I'm just having a good time, just doing my thing. Before I got home, somebody had seen me. They called my mother. I got home. The first thing she said, "What were you doing up there on Lewis Drive on that bicycle?" And I remember looking at her. And,
What?
and the first thing that came to my mind, because in the barbershop, those old men used to always say, "Boy, there's always eyes on you. You
You
don't
know
know
they
that.
watching.
They watch it." And that rang through my mind. And I went, you know what? Those old men are right. There's always somebody watching. But I internalized that lesson. And so to carry my family's name, to carry my family's honor, I always conduct myself as though there's eyes on me. Because
Right.
I'm not going to be the one to mess up my family name.
Right. Right.
Teenage years, I mean, couldn't have been better.
That's
Athlete,
nice.
grew into my own. True story. I was in the ninth grade. I was 5'2". The summer between my sophomore year and my junior year, I went from 5'2" to 5'10". The next year, I went from 5'10" to 2. In the ninth grade, I was about 110 pounds. When I was a senior, I was about 215.
Damn.
I mean, I had people. Oh, and I'm sorry. When I was in the ninth grade, my parents moved to another part of Port Arthur, and I went to a different high school. So the
Okay.
people that I went from kindergarten with to the ninth grade knew the old me. A lot of them, when we got together for our 10-year reunion, because I considered their class at Lincoln, my school, my reunion also, my
Sure.
class
Sure.
also. When I went to their reunion, a lot of those people didn't have any idea who I was. And then when they found out who I was, they said, "No, no fucking way." I said, "Yeah,
Terry Broussard.
yeah." And that's exactly what they did because they had to look up. Yeah, it's
Right.
me.
Right. Right. I love it.
But great childhood, probably like you. My dad and my mom's brother, we lived on one corner facing this way. My uncle lived on the other corner facing the other way.
Hmm.
So they would sit back there under the shade tree. I learned how to change brakes, tune ups,
Yep.
drop the transmission, change the oil, dig a trench for a sewer line, build a room addition, put shingles on
Yep.
a house, change
Oh
windows,
yeah.
all from the two of them
All that
sitting there
stuff.
drinking a beer. "Hey boy, yeah, you go move over that way a little bit." Hated hated every minute of it, J-Bo. Hated it. And I would not change a microsecond of it
Yep.
because I realize now what they were doing for me. They could have showed me, but they let me figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
That was the value of what being raised when I was raised. No YouTube, no
No. No.
Google.
No.
You had to get out there and get calluses on your hands the old fashioned way.
Yep. Say like one of my bandmates, Astro Joe said, you got to get your hands dirty, man.
Got to
Got to
get your
get your
hands
hands
dirty.
dirty.
Yeah, we used to jump off the roof of our garage, hit the ground, and pretend we were ninjas,
Yeah.
roll over, and then get on the ladder and climb back up there. Now, our parents never knew that
Right.
because
Oh
the
yeah.
back side
Heck
of the
yeah.
garage faced away from the house, so they couldn't see what we were doing back there. And I'm thinking, you think back, I could have broken my leg, broken my neck doing that, but that's the kind of stupid crap we did and got away with it, and nobody got hurt. Just good, clean fun. We swam in every watering hole that no one knew about. We could have drowned back there in those places. Nobody ever got hurt.
Dude,
Nobody
we used to go
drowned.
swimming in the Mississippi River. And, my mom and them never knew because they might be able to see you when you're in the front yard and on the street and stuff, but the backyard, they probably can't see you, the older ladies. And, we go out on the other side of the levee, of course. And we would go swimming and you wouldn't go far because the current was so tight, but that was half the challenge. And we'd go in there and make, we used to call them cow bellies, where you dip your feet into that muddy sand and just go, go, go. It's almost like a slow quicksand.
Oh yeah.
And they have no idea about it. This area in Lafitte, Louisiana, we would go jump off these pylons, and the water couldn't have been any more than like 10, 12 feet deep. And they had one guy jump off the damn bridge in Lafitte, and he's stuck in the mud and he drowned. But that was a considerably higher. These pylons were maybe, I don't know, about 15 feet above water. And we would, jump in and, backflips and all that stuff. But the
Hmm.
bridge was about 50, 60 feet. What we did was daring. That was stupid, But those are the types of things I'm talking about. I can't even imagine my boys doing stuff like that, But we did it back then. Yeah. But we did those kind of things back then. And
Absolutely.
man, it was just I thought about how my boys grew up compared to me, and it's not even the same neighborhood. Nothing negative to them, but they just the experiences. And you and I talk about the old Ernie Ladd saying, come under the learning tree. Well, you get under that learning tree with your dad. I call my pop, my uncles, coaches, my friends' parents, my friends' dads, and it's kind of funny with us. Everybody's dad was coach, even if he didn't coach. He was coach this or coach that. Coach J, Coach Bubba, or Coach Slick, Coach this, Coach that, But that's what we call people's dads. And what do coaches do? They teach you shit, They teach you things. So no, totally with you there, man. Whole different world, man. So you ended up going to college. You went to it's your associate's degree. Where did you go for that again, Terry?
Lamar.
Oh, so you did your associate's and your bachelor's at Lamar. Okay, cool. And then you ended up getting your MBA at
Yeah.
University of Houston. And congrats, man! I think you're the third guest I have that has an MBA. So I'm doing pretty good there, man, with my academia accomplishments with my guest here. And so after that, I think you had a career. I think you told me, and what do we have here in the private sector? You worked as a risk manager for about 5 or 6 years. I think you told me.
Yeah, that was the first job I had coming out of college. I would devise loss control strategies and ways to mitigate liabilities for municipalities. Um, I would craft all these very beautiful, elaborate documents, and then someone would sue. We'd get into court, and it would take them exactly 30 seconds to take it apart. So after 4 or 5 years of that, I thought, I need to find something else to do because this is ridiculous.
That was my next question because you've been in the medical devices industry for I think you told me 38 years, man. That's
Yeah.
pretty damn good. But what caused the pivot for you to rethink what you were doing here with your career?
Well, so when I got out of college, flat broke like everybody that gets out of college. I did a risk manager job during the daytime, and then from 5 until 11 at night. And so I met a couple of device reps, and these guys were, always driving a brand new cars, walking around in suits, and I'm like, man, I need that job.
Right.
And so I talked to this guy one time. He said, well, actually, there's a guy looking for somebody. And so I called him, and I said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've done. I said, well, you know what? Drive on over. He said, no, second thought, I'm coming to Beaumont on this day. Let's go to lunch.
How old were you around this time?
Well, I was 27 or 8.
27, 28?
Maybe
Okay,
29.
that makes sense on the timeline. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was 30 because I had my 31st birthday in my first training course. Anyway,
Okay.
so the guy came and he said, tell me about what you've done. And I was telling him about some of the things that I'd done. And so he starts to ask me all of these pointed orthopedic questions just to see if I had actually worked in an operating room.
Mm-hmm.
And so about at his third question, I said, look, let me stop you right here. Okay. I'm not somebody who's fronting. I said, I know more about the inside of an operating room than you'll ever know. He goes, I've been doing this. But I said, no. I guarantee you, I do. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've done, and I told him I've been on the harvesting team where they harvest organs. I was on the open heart team. I was on the trauma team. I was on the neuro team. So I've had my fingers in people's brains, in their heart, in their guts, and in their bones. And so he said, oh, and then so finally when he figured out, he said, you know what? I found out everything I need to know. Do you want a job? I go, wait, are you offering it to me? He said, yeah, I'll offer it to you right here, right now. He said, give me a napkin. He wrote on a napkin, just a rough draft of what our agreement was going to be. And I said, I'll sign it, but it's going to be legal. He said, no, I'll walk out of here and go make a copy and then I'll bring you back a formalized document. We said, you can go back to the hospital and put in your resignation. That's exactly what I did. And then I resigned and then started with that guy. He was a distributor, worked for him for 6 or 7 years, got my own distributorship, and did that until I retired from that business.
In Houston, right? All of this?
In Houston.
Okay. Okay. So I've done all those things too. I hate to disappoint you, but it's been with deer, not people. You were going over all these things. I'm like, man, I've done that with deer, but nowhere near with people. So that's cool, man. I didn't know any of that. So that is cool stuff there. So talk to me about a little bit about your family. Talk to me a little bit about your parents. Were they from New Orleans or
No, my dad was from Patterson. My mom was from Lafayette. Oddly enough, they never met each other until they met at that dance. They didn't know each other.
they had a Highway 90 connection? Is what you're
Yeah,
saying here, right?
yeah. And so my funny thing about it is my mom was 4'11", my dad was 5 feet,
And you're 6'3", six
six
four,
four,
6'4". Your mom was 4'11", and your dad was 5
5 nothing as we used to say.
5 nothing. So it had to be the food, Terry. That's all I'm going to say. We'll talk about food later because we're going to get sidetracked.
No, 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 no. Okay, but just to digress just momentarily,
Please.
it will surprise you mightily. I hit 12 years old, maybe 13, and I stopped eating J-Bo. My mother actually took me to the doctor and asked that man, why won't he eat? And I never forget that little old man. He said, man, you keep cooking. One day that boy's going to start eating. And
Right.
he's going to eat you out of house and home. And my mom, I mean, she was terrified because I wouldn't eat anything. I
Really?
was never hungry, wouldn't eat. J-Bo, that switch flip, man, listen, you talk about eat a loaf of bread and then finish the loaf of bread and stand in front of the refrigerator. I'm hungry.
Yep. Yep. I can remember when we were early teens and all that. My dad used to call us garbage mouths because we eat every damn thing you'd see, you know. But yeah. So you just stopped eating. You really
Just stopped eating.
curbed your
Stopped
appetite,
eating.
you know. Wow.
And it didn't stunt my growth. I think it just arrested it because
Ah,
I
okay.
was so small and I was that big around. Had big old head, big old Ethiopian refugee stomach. I got that picture around here. I have to bring it to you one day.
I'm about to
You'll
see
die
that.
laughing.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
yeah,
was skinny, man. When I was a kid, I was active though. I was always doing things, and it's almost like I was so busy doing things, I didn't really have time to eat. They would have to tell you to come in to eat. You know, get your behind in here and come eat. You know, and sometimes it would be peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which I probably survived off of for years. And then my father was actually a lot better cook than my mom was in the beginning. So he could cook pretty damn good. And so when he had time to cook dinner because he owned his own business, offshore service business, on the weekends he would cook some stuff, but during the weekdays, not really much. But my mom was real old school, which I'm sure you can relate to. It was luncheon meat, bologna, liver cheese, hog head cheese, all that crap, and you put it between two pieces of bread. Me and my buddies invented this thing. If it was like liver cheese, we'd have two pieces of bread on top and two pieces of bread on the bottom, so you don't taste the liver cheese. You know,
we used to call those jam sandwiches.
jam sandwich, man. That's it.
Just
That's
jam them
it.
together. That's right.
Yes, indeed. So, what did your father do for a living?
My dad was several things actually. He was a mechanic. He did that for I don't know how long, and then he got into merchant shipping in the early '70s, and I think he did that for about 10 years. Got a chance to take him all over the world. He
Nice.
really enjoyed it. By then, I was just about to leave, so I had two older sisters and two younger brothers. I was the oldest boy, middle child. Two
Got it.
older girls were gone. I was about to be gone when he started the merchant shipping, and then the two younger boys were at the house, and then he stopped that, and then got off the ship, came back, and then worked another 4 or 5 years and retired
Okay.
as a mechanic. My dad
Okay.
was a mechanical genius.
Okay.
I'll never forget. I was in engineering school when I learned about the valence states of metals, which
Mm.
is why you don't put copper and iron and all that. You don't touch them. Anyway, I never forget when we were boring out a cylinder on a car one time. He said, "Oh, make sure you don't touch those things. Don't touch." He said that metal that's not good. Now he didn't know anything about valence states of metals, but he knew that those metals were not supposed to touch each other. And my dad could fix anything. He could look at anything long enough. He'd stand there and look at it, and then he'd fix it. My dad had little to no formal education. I'll never forget. I was in the fourth grade one time, and
Hmm.
my dad said, "Son, I can't help you with your homework." And And they said, I'm ashamed of that. I said, well, Pop, and I used
Right.
to call him Pop. I said, Pop, don't worry about it. He said, son, I'm going to tell you something. You either work hard early and get your grades, or you work hard the rest of your life.
Right.
Well, that wasn't quite true because I worked hard and got my grades, and I've been working hard ever since I got out of college.
No doubt. And still to this day.
But it was my choice to work hard. I had
Right.
options where he didn't have them.
Right.
So,
No, I can.
but yeah, my parents were great people. I tell people all the time, I get irritated when people judge their parents. Number one, they forget that they were a child when their parents were adults. Their
Yes.
parents had pressures that they didn't know anything about. Unless your parents abandoned you, you have nothing to complain about because
Right.
you don't know what they were having to deal with. But my
And
parents were wonderful people. My
it was
parents,
probably stayed hidden on purpose too, so
yeah,
it
my
wouldn't
parents
affect.
did the best thing they could for me personally with my personality. They were busy watching the two older girls and watching the two younger boys, and they left me alone, which
Yeah.
let me sit and read encyclopedias. It let me do all the things that I had curiosity about
Hmm.
because they couldn't watch all of us. So they left me alone because I was the quiet one. Good thing they couldn't read what was on my mind. Well, never mind. You understand, but
Yes, indeed.
but
Yes,
but no, that
indeed.
was the best thing. But my parents were wonderful people. They were not perfect. They had their flaws, especially as I became an adult and an older man with my own children.
Sure.
But I don't fault them for anything that they ever did or said.
Well, that's I tell you what, that's admirable to hear, and I love hearing those kind of stories, especially when there were challenges growing up and things like that, and parents to be able to stay true and do everything they can to help their children and help rear their children, and just those types of stories I love hearing. I'm just a curious kind of person with those types of stories and those you know, the end results of them, which you are right there and very successful. And so they're smiling. That's the main thing. They're smiling, you know. So talk to me about your two sons. Talk to me a little bit about them.
My two boys, typical boys growing up, rip and ran, did everything that they wanted to do. When we lived in Kingwood, we lived exactly 430 steps from the pool. Why do I know that? Because they used to count how long it would take them to get to the pool. They spent most of their summers in the pool, and they had a great time. They both were football players. Both my
Okay.
young men were fortunate enough to play college ball. They got to the NFL. They
Both of them
both
did?
retired. Both of them. They both.
Okay, cool.
My older son played for Cincinnati and Carolina.
Okay.
My younger son played for Jacksonville and Chicago.
Nice. Where did they go to college, Terry?
They both went to San Jose State
Okay.
undergrad,
California, right?
California.
Yeah.
They got out there. They went to California. They went to San Jose State. They graduated. They did their NFL thing, and then they discovered the NFL Trust. NFL Trust pays for supplemental education for
Hmm.
NFL athletes. So one decided he wanted to go to Oxford. The other one decided he wanted to go to
Oxford.
Harvard. Yeah.
And where'd the other one go?
My older son graduated with a master's from Oxford. My younger son graduated from Harvard.
Man, that's pretty cool there, Terry. That's pretty cool.
Great young men.
Well, that's a reflection of parenting in my book. And, I don't know anything about their mother or whatever, but I know their father. And, that's a reflection in my opinion. So
Well, I thank you, Jim.
congratulations. And again, I love hearing this type of stuff. And I know you're proud of them because we talk about them every now and then. But I knew one had went to Oxford. I didn't know the other one had gone to Harvard. But they both graduated, correct?
Yeah, well, see, that's natural competition. When the older one decided he was going to go to Oxford, the younger one had to
Oxford,
go.
England, right? That's correct.
Right, right.
Yeah.
The younger one decided, well, he had to go to the best school in the United States because he couldn't let his brother outdo him.
What did the oldest one graduate in from Oxford?
Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
I know it's a master's in, I think, sustainable development. If I'm not sure,
Okay.
if I'm
Okay.
not
What
mistaken.
about your youngest one? Do you know
The
now?
younger one has an MBA in finance.
It's okay. Excellent. And how are they doing these days?
They are doing well. They started a private equity firm together,
Nice.
and they
Do they
are
live in the same location or do they live in different
no.
locations?
The older son lives in Panama. The younger son lives in Cleveland, Ohio.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now I'm probably going to make you smile a little bit. So tell me a little bit about these four granddaughters and one grandson.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you. Let me tell you what happens when you have a 14-year-old granddaughter. You get a link.
Yeah.
You don't get anything. You get a link. And see, all my grandkids call me B-Paw.
Peepaw.
So B-Paw, just click on the link and pay for it.
Yep.
That's all I get. Just click on the link and pay for it.
And what do you
Everything
do,
else,
Big T?
everything else is taken care of. It'll come to
And
me.
what do you do?
I click on the link,
Click on the link.
type in my credit card information, and I've done it so often. When I click on the link now, it pre-populates the thing, and I hit it says review and yep, and then I hit send, and away it goes. And then I look at my bank account, and it's like another couple of $100.
But it's Peepaw approved.
Yeah, but it's 14, 12, 7, and 2. That's the girls. Boys 5 years old.
It's just beginning. Now I know why you're at the gym all the time.
And if I find the person who invented the princess dress, I'm going to cut their throat.
Man, well, I can tell you, we're all boys, mostly on this side. Becky has a son who's about 40 now, and my two boys are 28 and 25. And her son has a son, but her son had a daughter. Her son's son had a daughter. Becky is a great grandmother at 58. Okay, but that's what happens when you keep having those babies at 18.
J-Bo, you better start now. Listen, man, I don't want to have to turn this off. So I don't see.
I can edit this out.
No, I ain't worried about the editing. I'm worried about her flying in there with a pan and you getting.
Oh, she hears everything. You know that. You remember talking about them old ladies when we were kids? Yeah, right there. That's
Oh
it.
yeah.
And I remember and I'm going off subject here for a second, but when we have one of those Ring doorbells, and I'm like, why the hell do we need that? You're peeking out of the blinds every 20 minutes. What do we need that for? You know? And I saw something online. It was called Old Security and New Security. It was Old Security that it had this old lady looking out a Venetian blind. And the New Security was the Ring, and they said, which one would you trust? And I think it was 80% the old lady looking out the Venetian blind.
Absolutely, because she knows everything that's moving out there.
Oh my God, man! Funny stuff. So anyway, the granddaughters are doing their job, making sure Peepaw is doing that clicking thing. And what about the little grandson? How old is he?
He's 5.
Okay.
He calls me every day.
He does.
Every day.
He's just inquisitive, or I mean, just
yeah. He just has to. He has to tell me. This is what he does. He'll sit there and talk and goes, "I have an idea." Every single day, he's got a new idea.
But you got to hear it.
I sit and listen to his idea. I think to myself, well, that's completely implausible, but I don't tell him that. And then it always ends with, now, when are we going to the seafood restaurant? We're going to go to the seafood restaurant. And then, are we going to ride? Yes, we're going to go ride the roller coaster.
Right.
And then, yes, we're going to ride the zip line. Okay, bye, Beepaw.
That's it. Well, Seth, my youngest one, had a thing because his favorite, you'd tell him something, and it was 2 famous words right after it. But why? But why? But why? And I had to use the legal terminology as a counselor with him, saying no further questions. And Becky's grandson, when he was younger, he's 18, 19 now, but when he was younger, he'd always want to go somewhere to eat. And he called me Coach. Coach, where are we going to go to eat? And I'm thinking, well, he might want to go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or something. Oh, Coach, I want to go eat the hibachi. Like, damn, boy, hibachi at 9 years old, man.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back to In the Pocket with J-Bo right after this message. The Bayou Junction Band is a Houston, Texas-based regional cover band. Being entertainers is the heart and soul of their culture. The audience having fun and being entertained is a goal that all of their band members share with a passion. They are a band that is exponentially growing in popularity in the Houston area, and in addition have recently performed in Austin, Texas, and New Orleans, Louisiana as well. They play a very diverse selection of fun and upbeat tunes, including, but not limited to, classic rock, country, blues, zydeco, R&B, Tejano, pop, Motown, etc. Bayou Junction is comprised of 5 amazing musicians hailing from Texas and Louisiana. A fun fact about their band is they might include a harmonica player, guest singer, etc. from time to time. You just never know the spice they might add. Their sets list is ever-changing with the goal of connecting with and entertaining audiences of various musical preferences. They bring a positive energy to their shows with hopes that the audience will forget about their everyday challenges and take them to the junction of fun times and good music for all to enjoy. Bayou Junction would love to be considered for your next private party, wedding, anniversary, charity function, fundraiser, or corporate event. Look them up on Facebook and Instagram under the name Bayou Junction Band. Please contact them today at bayoujunction@yahoo.com. That's bayoujunction@yahoo.com.
If that's good with you, because I'll put it in terminology that you and I could definitely relate to. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation. All right. So one of our favorite subjects that Terry and I talk about when we're at the gym is we talk about just old school stuff. And it might be music, it might be dishes, food we ate when we were younger, certain ways to do things, but we always end up having some kind of old school conversation. So I'm going to give you the floor, my brother, and let's talk about some old school stuff, because I know we could be here for a long time talking about this, but let's talk about some old school.
Well, let's talk about my first favorite right off, new school versus old school.
Okay.
Young men and how they dress.
How they dress. Okay.
How they dress. How they are or how they don't dress.
Okay.
I'm sick and tired of seeing these boys run around here with their pants off their butt, showing their dirty little underwear. In our time, J-Bo, we would have not only never done that, but we would have been jailed on public indecency if it had happened.
Yeah.
Where did that go? Why did that have to go away? I don't know the answer to that.
I see that every now and then, and I can totally relate it to what you're saying. And if we did something like that, and I know you played ball, you had coaches in school, and, you know, I did too, and, you know, almost more importantly, uncles, you know, if we dressed like that,
One time.
One time, baby. That's it. Uno mas. That's it. That's all it would take. And well, we talked about the learning tree with something, but what would the grandmas or the moms say? Go to that tree and get what, Terry?
Go get that switch.
Go get that switch.
And don't bring me back an old broken one. It better be green.
Because you're gonna take that green mile walk again and go get another one. You know, and look, I'm surprised I don't walk with a limp sometime. How much my ass got busted. You know, but man, to do some things like that. And what was that funny song that guy had? Pants on the ground. Wasn't that it? Looking like a fool with your pants on the ground. But I totally agree with that, man. It's just, yeah, that's some stuff like that, and yeah, that just not cool.
Well, but that's for the young men. Now let me switch to the young women. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm tired of seeing these little girls run around at various stages of undress, constantly pulling something down or pulling something up. You don't want to be looked at like a skank, and I'm just going to keep it 100% real. Dress like a lady, act like a lady, comport yourself like a lady. Maybe you'll find a better grade of young man will be interested in you instead of these hood bums that you wind up with having 3 and 4 babies for without getting married to.
Right, right. And which is going to be, it's going to be with you the rest of your life when you do that kind of stuff. Man.
I'm tired of seeing pajamas on planes.
Yeah.
When you started flying, which was right after I started flying, people were still wearing suits.
Yeah.
Women were wearing suits and heels on a plane. Now you can't fly from here to Lake Charles on a plane without somebody getting on there with slippers and pajama bottoms on.
Yep.
And my question is, why does the airline have to allow that? They make enough money. They can refuse these people. There's enough people in line to get on these planes that they can start kicking people off of this crap. I don't understand it.
Well, let's look at ball games. Look at ball games back from the 70s and before. Most of the time, you see people dressed up pretty cool, pretty good. And because I've seen, especially if you go back to the 50s and the 40s, and what do you see people dressed in? Suits. Hats, derbies, and I'm not just talking about the white leagues. I'm talking about the Negro leagues too. You know, because you look at those videos too of those old leagues, and I don't care what race it is. It's parallel. Because I can tell you, because let's be real, back in the 50s, you'll have the crowd at the game, the white crowd at the game, and it's in black and white film, but most of those people have on suits, jackets, and all that. Now, granted, there was probably only 10 or 12 teams back then, and they were mostly in the Northeast, and sliding south and out west more as time went on. But if you look at the old Negro leagues too, the black leagues back in the day, if they pan out in the crowd, you see the people dress the same way, you know.
Yep.
They ain't out there in t-shirts, you know, and all this other crap and everything else like you see today. And like even when our band performs, I tell the guys, long pants when we're performing. And when we travel on a plane, I'm never in shorts, long pants. You know, it's just, to me, it's like, it's a little more respectful thing. And it's not just the respect for others, it's respect for yourself and how you present yourself. And one thing I'll always go back to with that is because I love my mother. My mother was a wonderful, wonderful person with just some really horrible disadvantages in life growing up. But she did her best to try to teach us self-respect and, you know, manners and things like that. And again, we see these things a lot more as we're older than we did when we were younger. Because what was the advice that you had said? You're not more. You need to have those the self values. I think that's kind of what you're getting at here is the self values of things, and you just don't see it as much, man. You don't. And I can tell you, man, I did my best to instill that in both of my sons and from my side of parenting, and I know they both do it. That's one of the things I'm most proud of with both of them is that I know that they'll put that arm out to help an older lady to do something. I know that they will open that door because if I'm there, all I got to do is give, you know, the look, All I got to do is give the look because Lord knows we got the look a lot, you know,
Oh,
so
yes, we did.
we know what the heck it is. And all I got to do is give them a look. And I rarely need to do it. And I'll still do it to this day. I'll be like, the look means, boy, you better open up that door for that girl, you know, something like that. And that's just being a gentleman and being old school with those kind of things. You know, not saying we were perfect. We all made a lot of mistakes and did some boneheaded things and all that. But to have those values instilled upon you, it's part of your foundation, as far as
Absolutely.
I'm concerned. So no, but totally Roger that as far as the dressing. You know how the attire and yeah, with the young ladies, I think what the old saying I've heard before is up top they're always pulling down, and at the down there they're always pulling up. You know, and it's like, you know, you don't need to do that, man. You don't need to do that. You know, just keep it, you know, modest and let them wonder, let them think about it. You know,
Yeah, but it's very interesting when you listen to them talk when they're among themselves. They lament the lack of respect that they get from the boys that
yeah,
they're in their social circles. And I want to say to them, and a few of them I have, why would you expect a boy to respect you when you don't respect yourself?
right. And like you said, if they look beyond the front line crowd, the crowd behind them is probably the guys that's going to be giving them respect and showing them those gentlemanly things that you're talking about. And because neither one of my boys was the most popular guy or the big star athlete or any of that stuff, but they both had heart, and that's what I liked, especially, you know, I don't want to differentiate one from the other, but they had those values instilled upon them when they were young. And I'm glad to see they still, and I'm sure both of your boys are the same way. Both of your sons are the same way.
Absolutely.
And those things will be passed on because that's a generational thing, you know, as I get off of the soapbox right now. So we talked about that. Why don't we talk about some old school music? This is
Old
something I
school
really
music.
wanted to hit on
Well,
because before we start, I want to tell you, when I was on the way back from the gym today, I had to listen to the Healer with old John Lee Hooker, but the version he did with Carlos Santana.
Carlos Santana. Yes, sir.
Man, that is probably one of the most chill songs to me, along with "That's the Way of the World" by Earth, Wind and Fire. To me, that's two of the most chill songs I could listen to over and over and over again. And Healer's just with Carlos Santana's version with them, amazing. So I know you like that one. Tell me about. So that's an old school music because I call it. It may be a newer song, but that's some old school cats doing that music. John Lee Hooker and Carlos Santana.
Yeah. So old school music, right? We talk about it
Yes,
all the time. What do we say?
yes,
What do I always say? 1,000 years from now, what are they going to be playing? Are they going to be playing Lil Wayne, or are they going to be playing whatever freak show rapper? No, they're not going to be playing that. They'll still be playing the Temptations. They'll still be playing the Supremes. They'll still be playing Gladys Knight and the Pips. They'll still be playing Aretha Franklin. They'll still be playing the Stones. Still be playing the Allman Brothers. They'll still be playing uh, uh, shit.
Stevie
What's that
Ray.
group?
You know,
That,
they
that
still
group
be
that
playing
made
Billy Preston. They still
Billy
could be
Preston,
playing
they'll still be
Sly
playing the
Stone,
Beatles.
you know.
There'll still be Stevie Ray Vaughan will still be playing. That's real music.
Yep.
That's real music. And the thing about real music, when real music grabs you, whether you can dance or not, you're gonna move.
Yep.
You can't sit still. You gotta do something, you know, because the music grabs you, and that's from musicianship, that's from artistry, none of which is present today in today's music, because
Right.
today's artist is all about how outrageous you can be.
Right.
Let's not forget when Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, came onto the scene, his first album featured him pointing at all his bullet holes. Well, all of a sudden now you've got kids that want bullet holes because they want that street cred.
Correct.
Now, what Curtis Jackson did tell you was Curtis Jackson laid in the hospital bed for weeks praying he wouldn't die. But then he wants to prop it up. Look at how gangster I am. I got shot 9 times and I survived, and I'm still in the game.
Hmm.
Well, you know what? I'm not interested in hearing that. I don't care about that guy. I understand he's living in Houston now, trying to do some other things. I don't care. I tell
Right.
you somebody else I don't care about because new school versus old school music.
Hmm.
Jay-Z.
Oh man.
That guy called every one girl on every one of his records prior to having daughters a bitch. When what's her name gave birth to his daughters, he said, "I'm gonna have to stop. I don't want to use the B word anymore because now I understand how these people feel." Well, my statement is, to hell with you and how you feel. You
Yeah.
were calling somebody else's daughter a bitch. Now you don't want anybody calling your daughter a bitch. Well, guess what's gonna happen, homeboy?
The hypocriteness is going to hit you.
Yeah,
You know.
what goes around comes around.
Yep.
Now,
Without a doubt.
you talk about musicianship, right? Okay, so name one modern artist today, just one, that plays their own instrument.
Man, I'll have to go to guys like, but they're still kind of old school, Bonamassa and those guys. But and
But those are
again,
old school. I'm talking about
where's the
one
bands?
modern artist.
Where's the bands? Nowhere to be
No, not
found.
one.
You
Not
know,
one.
they want the singers with all the fake stuff, all the plastic stuff. It's an act.
People don't know Teddy Pendergrass was the drummer for Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. People don't
Yeah,
know that Marvin Gaye was the drummer before he started singing.
yeah,
People don't know Larry Graham was ever the bass player for Sly and the Family Stone. They don't even know that. They hear it and they go, "Wow, where did this come from?" Son,
yeah,
this was stuff we were listening to before you even slid off your daddy's leg.
yep.
Okay,
And
so
Karen Carpenter from the Carpenters is one of the
was
best
a
drummers
drummer
around during the early '70s.
and was a fierce sessions player and requested by lots of people.
Yeah,
People don't know that.
Billy Preston was almost the fifth Beatle because of his talent.
Well, if you ask the three surviving Beatles if that was true, they'll all say absolutely. And the
Yeah.
only reason he wasn't a Beatle is because the racist people in England at the time decided that they didn't want him as a part of the outfit.
Oh yeah, and they had a lot of fight. According to what I read from Ringo and from Ringo Starr and McCartney, they had big problems because they wanted him in, and I think the Stones kind of went through the same thing with him as well because the Stones tried to get him in, and they were like the rebel Beatles, you know. But man, just you know, Billy Preston, one of my favorite, and then people found out he was gay, which they kept, under a lid as well. And but man, what an amazing Out of Space is one of my favorite songs, man. And they had a word sung in it. It's instrumental, But man, it's just amazing stuff. And there's a few instances like that. I knew about Marvin Gaye as a drummer. Teddy Pendergrass, I knew, and he was also a backup singer with Harold Melvin. And then when he started singing, man, whew, they knew right away.
Luther Vandross was the backup singer for Bette Midler.
Yep, yep,
People didn't know that. Where did this guy come from? This guy's been singing for years.
yeah. Man, Luther is one of my favorites, man. One of my favorites. And I don't know if anybody's ever, if you haven't seen him sing "A House Is Not a Home" on YouTube with, man, what's her name? Whitney Houston's aunt, Dionne Warwick.
Sissy
Dionne
Houston.
Warwick in the crowd watching him sing. Man, it The first time I ever seen B.B. King, you want to take a guess? I never knew anything about B.B. King, but I saw him on TV when I was a kid. You want to guess? Sanford and Son.
Wow.
I used to love Sanford, and I still do to this day. But he made a guest appearance, and Red Fox was awesome with a lot of these people he played with over the years in the theaters and all that, and comedy acts and everything. Skillet, Leroy, and Esther, and him, LaWanda Page, they were best friends in real life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But he had B.B. King, he had the 3 Degrees on a show, if you remember that, you
I
know.
remember that.
And but he had B.B. King on the show, and the storyline was that he started singing the blues back in St. Louis because a guy stole away his girlfriend whose initials were E.W. And Fred thought it was Elizabeth Winfield, which was his wife. You know, I'm coming to join you, Elizabeth, but it ended up being Esther Winfield. And the funniest line of the show was he told Woody about it, Esther's husband, and Woody goes, "What does that tell you, friend?" And B.B. King said he was going to get even with the guy who stole Esther away from him. And the way he did it was he wrote him a check. And Fred was like, "Wait a minute." But they went at the end of the show, and man, you watch something, it just sticks with you. And it's so funny because, you know, Esther was the Bible toting, you know, judging friend and you old heathen and all that kind of stuff. If you listen closely, B.B. King goes, "Well, let's go down to the club Lucifer and go jam." And I'm like, how the hell they go down to Club Lucifer with Esther? But at the end of the show, it shows them doing a little medley with B.B. King playing. And I think Bubba, Esther, and Fred all did a little portion of the song. It's hilarious. If you know, it's hilarious. But man, watching B.B. King jamming with his bass player behind him and a drummer, it just stuck with me like there's no tomorrow. And it's one of my favorite portions of a TV show ever. That was my first introduction to B.B. King. About 2 or 3 years later, as I got a little older, the first album I ever bought was Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. The second album I bought was an old B.B. King album, you know. And ever since then, I've been hooked on B.B. King, Wolf, Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon. And you know who influenced those guys? Son House, Sonny Boy Williams. And man, I could listen, Becky will tell you, I could listen to that stuff all day long. That's when I get the eye rolling. But I turned on my youngest son, Seth, the one that is, it was at LSU, and he's the band director at that high school in Colorado now. He learned all that stuff, man. He knew the lead singers of Earth, Wind, and Fire. He listened to Tom Petty a lot. But I made him watch old Soul Train shows. I made him watch old the Saturday night special shows they had, Saturday night rock concert. Kirshner's rock concert or something on Saturday night. I think you know what I'm talking about. Don Kirshner? Yeah.
Don Kirshner's rocks on. And then don't
We
forget
watched
the Midnight Special.
Yeah, the Midnight Special, that's it. And even some things with old Wolfman Jack, man. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, Wolfman Jack. And he loves it. He loved watching all that stuff. And, you know, Commodores, you know, Earth, Wind, and Fire, all of that on Soul Train with Don Cornelius and all that, you know. Yeah, so I made sure he was very diverse with music. But old school stuff, you know. And nowadays, that's most of what he listens to is all that type of stuff. You know?
Because it's real music.
Yeah, and he's a real musician because you know he's a drummer. And
Well, once you study music composition and you
yes,
start to understand the mathematical structure
hmm
of music, then the first time you listen to any of that old school stuff, you go, "Whoa, I knew those guys were talented, but do y'all know what they're doing?" And people don't because they don't have music composition. But
right,
if you know music composition, you understand just how complex what these guys are doing, you know?
crazy.
And they do it so effortlessly. That's what sucked me in. The first time I saw a video of what's his name, the guy who was laying on the floor playing the bass for the Funk Brothers.
James Jamerson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Motown. Yeah.
First time I saw that, I went, man, these guys were out of.
Yep. And I think you and I had this little trivia moment one morning at the gym because I didn't know this until about I don't know 5 or 6 years ago. But the two main bass players at Motown were James Jamerson and Bob Babbitt. Babbitt is a white guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched the Funk Brothers, You told me about that. Remember?
Yeah, I
Standing
remember
in the
that.
Shadows of Motown. Man, that's one of the best specials documentaries I ever seen. And that was where Jamerson came out with the story about him. I heard him, I think hung over, laying on his back on the floor playing bass. And man, if guys in the audience, if y'all haven't seen Standing in the Shadows of Motown and you like music, it's a tribute to the what they call the Funk Brothers, all the studio musicians and background
Yeah,
players that really didn't get any credit, and just man,
and they
just
played for everybody: Marvin Gaye, Tony
everybody,
Terrell, the Supremes, the OJ's. They played for everybody.
four tops,
That's why the
everybody.
music was so tight because those guys, that band was so tight.
Yeah.
You know?
And man, you talk about could improvise on the fly, and it's just, man, it's just, I can't even comprehend that type of stuff. And going back to one thing, everybody that knows you that'll be watching this, hopefully, I know you played bass before because you and I have had conversations about this. So talk to me about playing bass before we move on with some old school stuff.
Well, I played it. I hadn't played the bass probably in, I don't know, 30, 35 years.
Uh
I
huh.
was heavily into it for maybe 3 years. Learned all the chords, learned all the stuff. And life happened, and I just put
Yeah.
it down. I still have it, and I'm going to pick it back up when things settle down and I can focus musically on building up my musical understanding. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, as so when I played in the band, my first instrument was drums.
Okay.
Then I played a trombone. Then I played a baritone horn, and then
Ah.
after I got out of that, I played the bass guitar. So I've always been a treble clef guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I'm sorry, bass clef guy,
Bass
not treble
clef.
clef.
Yeah.
I've always been a bass clef, not a treble clef guy. And so I wish I'd learned to play the piano. Interesting story. That's something I didn't know. I was at a place one time, and this woman saw my hands, and she goes, and she grabbed this finger and that. She said, "Oh my God, do you realize how easily you can learn how to play piano?" I said, "Ma'am, I don't know anything about a piano." She grabbed my ear. She said, "Come here." She walked me over to the piano, and she said, "Have you ever played?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. I'm a little bit of a musician." She said, "Where's middle C?" I hit middle C with my thumb. She said, "Extend your hand like that. Put your thumb on middle C. Drop your pinky." It was the next octave C. She said,
Wow.
there's only 4 or 5 people in the world that can do that."
Yeah.
Mozart was one of them. His hands were big enough. She said, "You could be a phenomenal." I said, "Well, I might have been, but not now."
Right. And that's one thing with bass is you got to be able to move that hand around. And my hand's a decent size, but I've seen some cats with smaller hands than me, and man, that's where you got to be the shifting king. You got to be able to
Well,
move back and forth on that fretboard, man.
they know how to move it.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, I can tell you, I know you played before because we've had a few conversations about that. And again, I just want to say thank you because when I first started out about 5 years ago, you were big time fully supportive and told me the importance of getting into practicing, and I'm a practice monster, so it works out perfect for me. And one of the first times I remember you came to see me was over at our lead singer Jerry's house, I think, and not long after I had started playing. And brother, I can tell you, I know you didn't teach me anything with it, but you were very supportive of me and always asked me how I was doing with it, and genuinely was asking me how I was doing. And when you showed up that day, I was like, man, I can't mess up now, Terry. See, I got to play right. And then when you came to see us at the
At the
Woodlands
waterway.
Waterways, yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool. I'm like, okay, I feel a little bit better now. And then I kept glancing over at you to see you, and you looked over at me one time and you went, I went, man, all right. Oh man, it's just one of the things like, it's just not so much from a coach's perspective, but it's like, I know we talked a lot about it, and again, I love when you come out to see us, and thank you when you do. But when I do see you, or maybe one or two others, I'm like, all right, man, I can't mess up today. I got to make sure I'm on my thing right now. But what do they call that? Positive pressure.
There you go. There you go. Well,
Positive pressure.
the one thing about and I don't know if anybody else is a bass player, but the one thing you know for sure, if I'm watching you, I know if you made a mistake.
Oh, I know you're analyzing. I know you are.
Oh yeah, I'm watching your hands. I'm watching everything. I know. No, no, you got no. Come on, J-Bo. No, no, no. And if you make a mistake, I listen for it, and then I listen for it the next time you come to that bridge and you correct it. I go, okay, he got it.
Yep.
So it happened. I mean, but that's just what musicians do. I mean, if I
Right.
was
Oh yeah.
a
Yeah.
guitar player, I'd do the same thing, or anything. That's just what we do. And again, once your ear is trained, you can't unhear that.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Without a doubt. Well, one thing all of us say, and believe me, I'm the weak link in the group, and a few of the guys, man, they got a lot of years. I mean, playing since they were in high school, and they're all in their 50s now, late 50s and whatnot. And man, if we'll have a little minor mishap or something like that, they're like, Jay, don't worry. Either we heard it, or maybe one or two people in the crowd might know it, but nobody else knows anything. That is so right on. It's not even
That is
funny.
right. That is right. Because just like at the Waterway, everybody was up dancing. They were grooving,
Yep.
and you didn't miss a beat, so they don't care.
Hmm.
They're just rocking it out.
They want to be entertained. And
That's
I can
right.
tell you, every now and then when we take a break, well, most of the time when we take a break, I'll go around and thank people for coming and shaking their hand. You know me, I just like working the room and having fun and meeting people. And I'll say something like, "Oh, y'all sound great. Y'all sound great." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I messed up in this part." "Oh, we didn't hear that." I'm like, "Well, thank you, thank you." And dude, there'll be one person every now and then. "Oh yeah, man, I heard that." Y'all were like, "Okay, this brother's watching us now." But it's just a fun thing. But getting back to it, bass playing's fun, but we're talking about the old school music thing, and to get where I'm at, I can't begin to tell you how many hours and hours and frustrating sessions, and man, I've got YouTube and I've got guitar tabs and I've got all this stuff. I'm not sitting here with a record playing, backing it up with the needle, listen to it, trying to do it by ear. Now I'll do that every now and then with songs just to force myself to try to learn things by ear, which actually, when you have time and minimal distractions, it's actually kind of a fun exercise, in my opinion. And that, to me, that's real musicianship there when you're playing by ear. Because how do you think a lot of these old timers back in the days and all that, how did they learn? They sure as hell didn't have an internet. They didn't have a computer, probably couldn't afford a music teacher. They might have saw, or even less so, heard something on the radio that caught their attention. They may have heard, I'll go to when we were younger. They might have heard of Eddie Van Halen, doing something on a guitar riff. They might have heard, Billy Preston on keyboards, and Lionel Richie, the Commodores. Lionel could sing. And he was a keyboard player big time, and they might have heard those types of things to motivate them. But you go beyond that, you're getting more like into the BB Kings and Glenn Campbell. And people don't realize how great of a guitar player Jerry Reed was, and from Smokey and the Bandit. And man, it's just amazing to watch some of those. Man, who's the one I'm thinking of? Superfly, Curtis Mayfield. Man, you know, awesome musician. I love listening to his stuff. And who's one of my favorites I always talk about? Booker T and the MGs. Man, you talk about some talent with four guys. And again, diverse group, and I love it. One of the funniest jokes I'll say with something like that is you got two or three black guys in the band, you got four or five white guys in the band, and they're the Doobie Brothers in the early 70s. Why the hell you think they were named the Doobie Brothers?
That was not an accident.
Right, it wasn't an accident. That's right. Oh, man, funny stuff. But talk to me about some of the old school band stuff that you like, Terry. Because you just don't see bands anymore, man. You don't.
No, and I and, and
It's a
I go
fading, it's
back
a
to
dying art, man.
I go all the way back to Duke Ellington.
Yeah.
That orchestra that he had.
Yep.
A lot of the things, the bands that accompanied Nat King Cole,
Yeah.
the
Count Basie.
smoothness of the music,
Yeah.
the harmonic resonance, the syncopation of the structure of the piece, and how they
Arrangement.
organized it and how flawlessly they played it. Then you move forward into the 50s when everybody kind of started getting into rock and roll.
Right.
Rock and roll was cool, but from my perspective, it wasn't until the late 60s that rock and roll hit its zenith. Because all of a sudden you got away from guys that were just banging the guitar to guys that were strumming it. And they were hitting you while the lead singer was taking you where he or she wanted to go. You always heard that guitar in the background, and your brain was frozen because you were trying to listen to two separate things at the same time.
Good point.
And that people don't realize that was the hook. because while you were listening, and the best example of that was Van Halen, right?
Whew.
Because David Lee Roth, while he was the biggest asshole in the history of the world, there was something about his voice that was raw, and it kept you listening to it. But you were always listening to Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
And what a perfect time to transition. Every time I see one of these greatest guitar player lists, Eddie Van Halen is no higher than number 15. And I go, look, I've listened to all those other guys, okay? Now, y'all can think what you want to think. The only guitar player that I think is better than Eddie Van Halen, and he's untouchable, is, of course, say his name. Who's the best guitar player that's ever lived?
The best guitar player ever lived. Man, I could say 4 or 5 names.
Hendrix.
I could say Hendrix. I could say, and I know you're gonna laugh at some of this, but I'm telling you, here's Roy Clark from the old Hee Haw. Man, Eddie Van Halen said that's one of the best guitar players he's ever heard.
Prolific.
Oh.
And Chet Atkins was a hell of a
Chet
guitar.
Atkins.
But here's the thing. The thing about and Stevie Ray Vaughan. But the thing that separates
Hendrix,
thank you. The thing that separates Hendrix from everybody else, Hendrix played that guitar upside down and backwards. Now you think about that for a second. Everybody else is trained big string at the top, tight string at the bottom.
Yep.
He played it the other way and upside down.
Because he's left-handed. Yep.
He's left-handed.
Yep.
So he's got to train his brain to think opposite of the way the music's written. Think about that.
Yeah.
So that's why there were people that were technically as sharp as Hendrix, but the fact that he did it all backwards and upside down is hands down for me. But Eddie Van Halen is always my number 2, always.
Yeah, and if I had a top 5 or something like that, I would have to say, Hendrix, Van Halen for sure, Roy Clark, because I've watched Hee Haw a million times with my grandmother growing up on a black and white TV in an old shotgun house in West Bank of New Orleans, and I've seen that guy do things with a guitar, sounds I didn't even think was possible. I think Stevie Ray's right up there. B.B. King, amazing. Santana, come on.
See, now you're already at 7. So
yeah,
you're
there you go.
The top
to me, it probably have to be a top 10.
Yeah,
it's like with the college football playoffs. Well, we got 4. Well, we really need 8. Well, we got to have 12. What you gonna do? We can get into keyboard players, we can get into drummers. We can get into all
Absolutely.
kinds of. It's all a matter of personal taste, in my opinion, and taste. Really, what do you like? What do you like hearing? But like you said, Chet Atkins, amazing guitar player. I think if one of the modern day ones, and he's probably getting a little old school now, is I think John Mayer's a damn good guitar player. Buddy Guy's a very underrated guitar player in my opinion. And amazing.
And we haven't even mentioned the Winters, Edgar and Johnny. See?
Underrated guitar players. Guys, currently, I think Satriani is one that's pretty damn good. He plays with Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony from Van Halen, and with John Bonham's son, I think from Led Zeppelin. John Bonham, who died in I think 1980 or whatever. But his son plays with Hagar and Satriani and Michael Anthony. Michael Anthony, people don't know, man. What a great backup singer with the harmonies with Van Halen. All those high pitch backup note. That's all Michael Anthony on bass. Ain't too many bass players that sing.
Nope.
I'm the king of the bass players that's not allowed to sing.
And then don't forget about Brian May from Queen.
What's that?
Brian May from Queen.
And what else about Brian May? That's just people don't know.
He was an aeronautical engineer.
He's a genius.
Yeah.
Aeronautical engineer. That's crazy,
Yeah.
Eddie Lee.
How brilliant are you when your side gig is you're an aeronautical engineer?
And now you know why they had the talent they had in Queen. That's just.
And crazy. That's another group. That's another group 1,000 years from now they'll be playing those songs every single one.
Without a doubt. If you haven't seen that movie, the young man that played Freddie Mercury, that was just amazing.
He did a phenomenal job.
God, fantastic, just off the charts good.
But when you think about Freddie Mercury in real life and what was going on with him, how he knew he was dying from AIDS and was weak and throwing up, and came out there and gave that performance, that's amazing.
Oh my God, yeah. You seen a video of him warming up the crowd?
I did.
Oh my. Just crazy good, man. Those are the types of things I watch. I'll just get goosebumps, man.
Who wants to come out after that?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they should have shut the damn thing down after Queen anyway.
yeah. You got it. You got that right. You got that right. So let's transition a little bit with old school. Let's talk about some old school, maybe I don't know, sports. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so let's talk about old school football and how new school football. You hear a lot of people talk about how, they might as well make them wear pink dresses and all that kind of stuff. And listen, as an old quarterback, I
Yeah,
get very irritated when people talk about David Carr when the Texans drafted him. Oh, he
yeah,
was a garbage quarterback. He was this. He was that. Well, again, as an old quarterback, you stand back there, standing up, and get ready to deliver the ball, and let a lineman take a dead run on you and hit you full speed. And he was sacked. He still holds the record for the most times a quarterback has been sacked in a year, ever.
to this
You
day.
stand there, or better yet, like I tell them, you run into that wall at full speed and then get up and do it again, and then do
Yeah,
it 35 times a game. And then you talk to me about David Carr. Oh, he had happy feet. You goddamn right he had happy feet. I'd have happy feet too if those guys hit me like that. The
goddamn right.
line was as porous as a sieve, and he was running for his life.
Yeah,
He wasn't a garbage quarterback. They knew what they were doing when they drafted that guy.
yep,
But, they don't play real football anymore. Well, okay. Put on a pair of pads. Go let one of these 6'5", 335-pound guys run into you
yeah,
that are bench pressing a refrigerator for warming up.
yeah.
And let's see what you think.
And you're lucky if it's just one of them getting to you.
You're lucky if it's just one.
Yeah, and
Versus, well, yeah, but back in the day, yeah. Let me tell you what a big lineman was back in the day. Dick Butkus was a fearsome linebacker at 5'11", 225,
yeah,
15 pounds lighter than I am.
right.
He was a fearsome linebacker. Nowadays, you got 6'5", 265-pound quarterbacks. Dante Culpepper,
Yep, yep,
Cam Newton.
yep.
I remember when Cam Newton first came in the NFL and people would try to tackle him and he would literally stiff arm him into the ground.
Yeah,
And then, of course, he was complaining about getting hit too hard, but they had to knock the crap out of him because he was so damn strong.
yeah.
So, old school, yes. They should have outlawed Lester Hayes' sticker. Old school,
Agreed.
yes. They should have outlawed Deacon Jones's helmet slap.
Oh yeah.
Old school, yes. They should have outlawed what's his name's forearm to the neck.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Tatum
And
and
when they
Atkinson.
flipped Bradshaw
That's what
over
they did all the
backwards,
time.
yeah, when they flipped Bradshaw over backwards and broke his neck,
Yep.
they should have gone to jail.
Yep. Remember what
New-
Charles Martin did to Jim McMahon?
Yeah,
Man,
same thing.
looked
Should
like
have
a,
gone to
a
jail.
suplex on the NWA. You know?
Yep, should have gone to jail.
Yeah.
Now,
Exactly.
new school. Is any one athlete worth $40,000 a year? That's a hard statement to answer, knowing what the value that player brings the team. Perfect example, right? Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Before Mahomes started doing his thing in Kansas City was an also brand.
Oh yeah, for a lot of years.
They won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. Went to a 4th in 5 years and lost it. Kansas City regalia is still flying off the shelves.
Yep.
Every game, they get one of the highest ratings on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Their payola is a function of their rating. Patrick Mahomes is directly responsible for Kansas City doubling its revenue. So their revenue was $400 million. It went to $875 million the last year.
Yep.
So if he alone, and it's not just him, it's him, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, and all those other guys,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
But as a quarterback, you get too much credit and you take too much blame.
100%.
But is it reasonable to say if he increased the value of that team by $400 million, is he worth 50? I can't argue with that.
It's hard. It's hard to argue that, and especially if the dollars are available, and they are.
And they are.
They are available.
Nope. I don't hear anybody complaining about that kid in the Dodgers. The Asian kid got a $70 million a year contract. Yeah, $70 million a year. $250,000 each game.
Think about that. $250,000 each game.
To walk out there on that diamond and play a kid's game.
Yeah.
$250,000.
Yeah.
Come on now.
And you think about, back in the day, Reggie Jackson and Rod Carew and
As soon as baseball season was over, those guys had a
George
job.
Brett,
They had a job.
It's great, but again, the dollars are there.
Well,
Whereas
and
back
let's
then
take it
those
to the next
dollars
step.
weren't there, but it's those TV contracts. That's what did it.
Let's take it to the next step. NIL deals, name, image, and likeness for college players. A lot of people say that's ruining the sport. I say bullshit. When you got Nick Saban, who left, I don't remember where he left before he wound up at Alabama, but he was
left
making
the
$10 million.
Dolphins. Remember, he left the Dolphins. Miami.
Okay, but no, but he went. He did a stint at LSU.
He was at LSU, then he went to the Miami Dolphins, then he went to Alabama.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I promise you,
You're
that's
right.
how it was.
You're right. I'm thinking about Dennis Franchione. He went from TCU for a hot minute. He was at A&M, and then he went somewhere else. Okay, well, these guys are making between $10 and $15 million a year as a head coach. They don't block, they don't tackle, they don't throw, they don't catch, they don't run. So how are you going to tell me no athlete's worth $50 million when they're directly responsible for raising the value of the team when you're paying
100%.
coaches a guaranteed contract? NFL is coming around on guaranteed contracts, but nobody used to have a guaranteed NFL contract. In the most dangerous sport there is, nobody's contract was guaranteed. Baseball, basketball, you sign that contract, you're going to get every dime.
Guaranteed. Yep.
So new school versus old school, I'm happy that college players are getting some revenue because I don't want to hear that, well, you're getting a free education. Yeah, that education would have cost you, even at Harvard. Harvard's probably the most expensive school. So it's $65,000 a year at Harvard.
Right.
Their football team sucks.
Right.
You go to Florida State or Miami, when that program was at its height, and they were at a bowl game, conference championship, making all that money for that conference, and they kept. I think the way it works is the school gets half, the other half goes to the conference. Well, they were making Miami millions of dollars. The coaches Snellenberger, Jimmy Johnson, Davis, and Coker. Those guys all made a ton of money. Not an athlete officially.
Officially. You know that as well as I do. I got a lot of buddies that played in college and all that.
Yeah, that's why I said.
You know what the term is? The envelope. The envelope.
The envelope and the handshake, baby.
The envelope. Yep.
But the point is, there's no reason why those kids shouldn't get paid. And the fact of the matter is, when Jalen Hurts was at Alabama, he should have gotten money. When Mahomes was at Texas Tech, he should have got some money.
Yep.
I don't want those kids making $10 million a year in college.
Now again, we keeping it real. So you know as well as I do, they were most likely getting some money. And they were probably getting good money. You see some of these documentaries, and you know Cam Newton can't keep his mouth shut. So Cam's dropping dime on everything all the time. You almost have to discount what he says sometimes. But
no, they were getting money.
They were getting money. It just wasn't out in the open. I don't think it was out in the open. Well, it definitely wasn't out in the open.
No, they were.
I don't think it's anywhere near what they're getting now.
No. Well,
just an objective statement. Just an objective statement.
Deion Sanders' son, the quarterback, is taking a pay cut. Yep. He was making $3 million a year at Colorado.
Yep.
He's going to make less than that at Cleveland, where he's going. So he took a pay cut to go to the pros.
You got finite eligibility.
That's right.
That's the thing. And you might see more of them staying in college like Shedeur did. And, Travis Hunter as well. And
it's cross. It's not just basketball. It's not just football. It's basketball. You look at the kid for Duke. I think it's Duke. The phenom kid is already Cooper Flag. Yeah, Flag. Yeah. He's already he made himself eligible for the draft. And to that I say the same thing I've been saying since before my kids were in the pros. Go get all that money.
Get as much as you can.
Because NFL, which as far as I'm concerned should be the logo for all sports, NFL stands for not for long. So go get your money before your body breaks down and make enough so that you can comfortably retire and not have to worry about anything.
But be smart and listen to what these veteran players tell you when you're going through your rookie symposiums, which, there's a handful that do, but you always hear about the ones that don't, of course, because the negativity is what they think sells.
My oldest son in Cincinnati said he was the only rookie that was awake during the financial seminar. Everybody else had their head on the desk asleep. Yeah. He was the only one awake paying attention.
Good parenting, T, like we talked about. Good parenting,
How many refrigerator parents do you need to walk into the locker room and go, hey, man, you know what I do every day? I go fishing at the fish pond. That's how I survive.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, it'll happen to you. Oh, yeah, it ain't gonna happen to me, dog, because I'm gonna ball out.
Yeah.
Well, you know who else thought they were gonna ball out? That guy and that guy and that guy and that guy, and they're all working at the Home Depot or McDonald's.
And you know what? There's 32 other teams like this, 31 other teams like this one. You know, so no, totally with you. And I mean, I don't watch sports as much as I used to when I was younger. And you know, I kind of miss some of the old ways of some of the things. And to me, if you take away all the pregame stuff and all the experts talking and all that nonsense, you know, I just like watching the game. And that's what I enjoyed about. Sometimes I'll turn off the damn sound so I can just watch it, because sometimes it gets aggravating depending on who's talking. I guess it's like old days when Cosell was doing the game and stuff like that. But it's more of a show than it is a ball game, and that's why I like going to games, because you don't have all that shit feeding in your ears and everything. You know, you can actually watch the game, and like you said, it's a kid's game. It's a freaking game, you know, per se. But I do enjoy. I love going to NBA games, but in going to the game, I watch it. I discern everything that I want to see about it, and I'm not listening to this one or that one and this and all the BS and all that. You know, I don't care. You know, I just want to go watch these guys play and do what they do. Like going to see a band. You know, I want to see the band play, or when I was younger, seeing a band. I don't care about all the crap that goes on behind the scenes, or what some former band members that might commentate during the concert, what they got to say. I don't care about all that crap. I want to be entertained and listen to the music. And like you said, you know, hey man, this is fun. I'm enjoying this, you know. So those are the types of things, like some of the old school, but I do like some of the new school when it comes to some of the sports things. And I'm a big believer in, well, one thing I don't like, and I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but I'm not a fan of the extra games. I'm not a fan of the Thursday night games. I'm not a fan of the overseas games. I'm just not, because don't be telling me you're all player safety and you're concerned about them and this and that, and you're shortening weeks. You're making them travel. You're taking away home games from, you know, a dedicated home crowd. And you know, the thing I really don't like is the extra games and the Thursday night games. I just think it's going to cause players to get hurt. They're still human. Yes, they're bigger, they're faster, they're better nutrition, but the human body was not meant to take that kind of punishment like those guys take. And you're going to have more injuries, and at the end of the day, it's going to cost people in the league more with the injuries to these guys. And that's just my take on that, Terry. I'm not a fan of that stuff.
Well, so as with everything with me, I have diverging points of view.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree with you from a player safety perspective. However, the thing that fuels these contracts that these kids are getting is the TV revenue.
Oh, yeah.
So the more opportunities for the television people to broadcast their game, because remember, when we were kids, by 6 o'clock, certainly by 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, football was over.
Yeah.
There was no Sunday night game. There was no Monday night game.
Well, Monday night they did.
Game.
Monday night they did. When I was a kid, Monday night. I know you're about, what, 5 or 6 years older than me, but.
Right, but I remember when they started Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
But
it was
before
like
they didn't have
71,
71, 72, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But they didn't have Monday night game. They didn't have Sunday night game. They didn't have Thursday night game.
Right.
So really, those three extra opportunities for them to broadcast those games increases the TV revenue. That's where these guys are getting all this money from. So on the one hand, you're absolutely right. I'm not a fan of it from a player safety perspective, because again, I don't care how big, how strong, how fast you are, how well conditioned you are, how fast your body recovers. Don't care. You have a finite amount of opportunities to do what you do before your body snaps back and it's done. So I would like to see that go away and just have, regular high school on Fridays, college on Saturdays, pros on Sundays.
Yep.
Playoff time.
I'm cool with the Monday night game. I'm cool with that. But outside of that, in an extra game,
I will agree with you on the Monday night game, but then the problem is you got an extra day to prepare when it's your Monday night game, but you're short a day the following week.
Right.
But that's just one day. But when you got to play on Sunday, then turn right around and play on Thursday, now you get that 10-day stretch where you're off, but that's too much. That's too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, what if on Sunday you're playing Kansas City, and then on Thursday you're playing at Baltimore. Good luck with that, Good luck with that, And if you got to,
That's going to hurt.
On one Sunday you're looking across and you see Urlacher, and then 4 days later you're looking across and you see Ray Lewis. Good luck with that. I wouldn't want it. Good luck with that. And I just think you're seeing more injuries these days because of that. I don't know. It's just it's a tough balance. And again, it just comes to just a personal preference with those types of things. But the thing that I think is a little hypocritical, and don't preach so much about player safety if you're going to be doing all these things. You don't need it's window dressing. Okay. It's window dressing.
But let's keep it real. So did you watch that 60 Minutes documentary where they talked about the players that had CTE? They talked to the young man who his wife had the hospital bed, went to Penn State. He was a running back. They asked him if he had it all to do over again, would he? He said yes.
Yeah.
They are understanding that the problem.
Yep.
There's a missing component that differentiates old school from today. And here's what it is. When you and I were a kid, there was no Pee Wee Football League year-round. No. There was no 7-on-7.
No.
There was no AAU.
Travel ball.
You played during the season, and that was it. You played Sandlot, which didn't put that much stress because you're too busy having fun. These days, some of these kids are semi-professional athletes before they get out of high school. And again, we're talking about a human body, which is a machine that has a finite life. If you're stressing that machine at 8, 9, 10 years old, and you're 8, 9, 10, through your teenage years, through your college years, by the time you get to the pros, you got maybe 3 good years left before your body breaks down because you've used it all right. And if you remember all those years Nebraska would have these beasts?
Linemen.
Just beasts. They get to the NFL and because they used them up in college.
Yeah.
And so
that's when they played 4 years at college,
That's a component of it too, because these kids are starting these sports so much earlier and they're playing for so much longer. By the time they get to the pros, their bodies are breaking down faster.
Running backs, Earl Campbell, George Rogers, they get beat up in college like there's no tomorrow. And every now and then you'll get, that freakazoid, like a Walter Payton. But Walter was good at avoiding hits. He was good at giving the hits, but he was good at avoiding the hits.
So was Barry Sanders. Hardly never saw Barry Sanders get hit dead on. Now, the anomaly and all that was
count on one hand, probably.
No, the anomaly was Bo Jackson. No matter where you hit him, no matter how hard you hit him, until that guy grabbed his leg when he was trying to accelerate, you couldn't hurt him.
Right. Yeah.
And because of who he was and how strong he was, that's what ended his career. Because he pulled all the attachments off his hip, killed the blood supply, his femoral head died, and that was the wrap.
And walked off the field.
Yep.
With a dislocated hip. Walked off the field. And still ended up coming back playing not single A ball, Major League Baseball. That's people just do not understand about Bo. I've talked to some of the young guys about Bo, and I'm like, all I can tell you is go YouTube and watch him. You'll see what I'm saying.
But then when they see it, they don't believe it. They think it's
yeah. Oh yeah. 4.2840. What did Bo weigh? 230, 235?
That was his playing weight.
Yeah.
Do you remember that old show, The Superstars?
Yes.
Remember that thing they used to have where you ran from first base to home?
Yeah. Yep.
He had the fastest time ever recorded running from first base to home. I believe it.
Oh, without a doubt. I think Dion would be close, but man, it's just, and I remember one time they asked Bo about him and Dion running pretty close in the time. He said, tell Dion to carry 30 more pounds with him. Let me know how he does.
I promise you,
it said it very matter-of-factly. Very matter-of-factly.
I promise you, Deion Sanders wouldn't want to hit Bo Jackson.
Even Dion said one time, I saw Dion, he said, I ran across the field to try to catch Bo, and when I got to him, because he got tied up for a second with a couple of, would-be tacklers, he said he took me and went. That's what he did. And I remember Bo playing vividly,
Yeah. And I remember Bo ending the mystique of one Boz.
Yeah. Boz was he was his own worst enemy. He was a good ball player. I'll give him that. He was a good ball player in college. He was a lot of hype. Now, did he eventually tackle Bo and Bo kind of trucked him? Yeah, but you got both sides of it, but I gotta go with Bo, and that's it. Next time you want a train ride, buy a ticket. And I think because I watched the documentary on Bosworth and Bo Jackson, as a matter of fact. Boz got humbled, man. He got humbled, and he understood. And when he got that MRI or whatever done on his shoulder, which ended his career, they said he had a shoulder of a 70-year-old man, and
I
he
believe it.
couldn't go back. And but it made for some good TV when Oklahoma played Miami back in the day. During those days, and but yeah, he was his own worst enemy. But it was good to see the documentary of him being humble and how he, they had a picture of him, I think, of when he was at Oklahoma with the hair all spiked and everything, and he said, "What do you think when you see this?" And he goes, "I see a confused, head messed up, thinking he's a lot more than what he really was person. That's what I see right now." And to see that was really kind of eye opening. And then you see, I saw a documentary on Bo, and man, Bo's a quiet country boy, man. That's what he is, dude. He's a country boy, and he had a stutter, grew up with a stutter, and got in all kind of fights when he was young because he stuttered. And I didn't know a lot of things about this, but just he said God blessed me with just abilities that other people did not have, and I realized that when I was a teenager, and I had trouble, he said, processing that in his head, and but God touched him athletically, but everybody's got their limits, and it happened to Bo in a tackle against the Bengals in that game. I'll never forget seeing that either. And man, I was like, man, I think Bo got hurt, and we were talking with some dude. We seen Bo Jackson. Did you see that tackle? Because that leg went out, and you could see that displacement, and you're like, man, but he walked off. How many people could have did that? And it's like Kobe when he tore the Achilles and he walked off. It's like, how the hell are you guys walking off, man? It's just they just gifted, and it was just watching Bo was a treat, and to be able, like you said, be able to tell young people today about him. Oh man, that's AI. No, brother, there ain't no AI in that.
No, that was
That's
real.
that's real. That's real man right there. So let's talk about old school and new school TV,
Old school and new school. What?
television.
Man, come on now.
I knew you were gonna do. I knew your reaction before I even
Come on
finished.
now.
It's just we'll make this a quick one, but when I watch TV, what I watch. I watch that. What is it? ETV or what? Not ETV. The old shows.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like TV
Yeah.
Land and all that.
TV Land. Fred
Yeah, yeah.
Sanford. Good Times. I don't watch Good Times as much as I used to because it's like I love the years when James was on it, when John Amos was on it. I love him, but it's man, every show was sad, But they truly tried to depict a lot of things that people were going through, and what's the one? Andy Griffith Show. I love Andy Griffith Show. The Waltons. It's just old, just old simple times watching, and it ain't because of the period because that was before our time, but I remember my parents watching that kind of show, or my grandparents watching. They loved it, so I sat there and watched it with them. The Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason, you know, that kind man, you laugh for days watching that stuff.
Well, I tell everybody if you can watch 2 episodes of Green Acres and not laugh, you got some
You
problems.
got problems, man.
Because if you ain't laughing at Arnold Ziffel,
Yep,
if you ain't laughing at Hooterville,
yep.
I mean, come on, man, you got some problems.
My
I
dad,
don't understand.
my dad turned me on to watch Andy Griffith because I watched that movie, The Ghost of Mr. Chicken, Don Knotts, and I'm telling you,
Yeah.
man, he starts all that shaking. You watch that, you don't laugh. You ain't human, man.
Let
But
me tell you. Let me tell you a little story about the. Let me tell you a little
please,
story about the Waltons.
please,
We all watched that in the '70s, and
yeah,
the whole story about them being up there on that mountain and all that.
yeah.
And you get into discussions with people, and people will say, "Well, what do you think is the most intense love scene you've ever seen?" And I go, "It's very easy for me to answer that question without any hesitation." I say, "The Waltons," and they go, "Waltons? What are you talking about?" I say, "Let me tell you something." I say, "Let me tell you something. There's a scene on the Waltons. It's
Okay,
Christmas, and there's a heavy snow on the mountain, and the dad the dad is going to help somebody, and the snow picks up, and then they can't find the dad. And Grandpa Walton and John Boy, and I can't remember I think it was Jim Bob, the next oldest boy. They're all out walking, and they come back in at night. They got their little lanterns. Well, we're going to have to stop looking for him. We can't find him. And then the girls are sitting with their mother, and the mother says, the girl said, well, what do you want? Well, what do you want? And then one of them says, well, Mama, what do you want? And she's rocking, and she says, baby, the only thing I want for Christmas is the sight of your daddy walking through that door.
Yeah.
Now, I thought, now, I was not a grown man at that point, but I was, late teens. And I thought, the cynic would say, well, of course she wants that man. She's got 8 kids. Who the hell else is going to want him? But the romantic in me says, you know what? All that woman wants is that man to come through that door. That's all she wants. She doesn't give a damn about Christmas. She doesn't care about this or that or the other. She needs her husband to come walking through that door. And I thought, what a great expression of love, because, the Waltons didn't have much. All they had was each other. But it was never illustrated better than in that scene. That all she wanted, and the way she said it, she said, baby, only thing I want for Christmas is the sight of your daddy walking through that door.
Right.
And so when people ask me, that's my best love scene, hands down, because it covered everything. The naivete of the children, the unawareness of the girls, the boys who are on the cusp of becoming men are starting to understand if dad doesn't show up, he's going to die on that hill, on that mountain, because hypothermia is going to set in. The grandfather's trying to keep everybody light, but he's thinking it. The mother is really thinking it, but and she doesn't say, baby, your daddy's got to come through that door. She doesn't get hysterical.
Right.
She just says, only thing I want is the sight of your daddy coming through that door.
Yep.
And when he comes through the door, they don't, he doesn't jump her bones. She doesn't jump his bones.
Right.
She just looks at him and she smiles.
Right.
And that
I
to me is,
I remember the episode you're talking about now that you brought it
that
up.
is the most intense love scene I've ever seen on TV. Nothing graphic, because it didn't need to be graphic. It said everything that needed to be said and demonstrated everything that needed to be demonstrated.
It was intense right here.
It was intense, especially for a boy who was on the cusp of getting in his late teenage years.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, that's the kind of woman I want.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
No, that's powerful stuff there. No, I wouldn't have even thought of that. No, that's a good example, because there was no police to call. There were no drones to go searching in the air. And, there was no GPS systems. There was no watches and any of that crap.
Nope.
There really wasn't much of any phones,
Nope.
and you just had to go see people and get up and go. And there wasn't a whole lot of vehicles either, for the most part. You either used horses or mules and, all that back then. And my grandparents came to New Orleans in a covered wagon, because they always told me about it when I was a kid growing up. But they were kids at that time. And but yeah, that's a great example, Terry. And again, you're not going to see that on TV shows today. You're not going to see,
because these days everything's too graphic.
Yeah,
they have to over dramatize. Somebody's got to be half naked and all that. That's not necessary.
No, it's not
necessary. You don't have to do that to convey the emotion that's attached with it. And look, I'm no prude. Okay, let me get that out there. I'm no prude at all.
Right.
But you don't have to be vulgar. You don't have to be obscene.
No, you don't. Yeah.
And so that's what I miss about old school versus new school. And again, not just TV, but lyrics, right? We all knew what Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds meant.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody had to say LSD.
Right.
So it's the base vulgarity that offends me these days.
Right.
Because we grew up listening to that and we knew what it meant and we knew the code, but it wasn't something that had to be bleeped out.
It was subliminal. And
exactly.
It was more of it was floating in the background. But something else was in front of it or on top of it, It
was brilliant enough where, as a child, you didn't know what that word meant, and you weren't listening to the music, the words anyway. You were listening to the beat. If you were old enough or sophisticated enough, you went, okay, I know what they're talking about.
Well, let's talk about Prince, old school Prince, because as well as I do, Prince had some nasty stuff out there in that first album or two.
Yes, he did.
you wasn't even really paying attention to the words so much. It was the rhythm, it was the beat, it was it was the essence of the music being played that had you moving and bebopping. And so what about the words?
Perfect example, Little Red Corvette.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
felt a little nervous when I saw all the pictures of the jockeys that were there before me.
Right.
Now, to the uninitiated, well, guys, is he talking about a horse race? No.
Right.
He's not talking about a horse race. No. He ain't talking about those kind of jockeys.
Right.
But again, you have to have a certain level of sophistication to understand that. And
Right.
what he didn't say was, I'm not talking about all the guys you screwed before me.
Right.
He didn't have to say that.
No.
And so that's the kind of elegance and eloquence that I miss. As opposed to this crap these days that these kids will come out and say anything and everything.
Oh yeah.
And
Very
besides all
graphic.
that,
Very graphic.
they all sound the same. They all sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
You
Totally
can't
agree.
differentiate one from the other.
Totally agree. And it's just I just much rather those things. And some of it's not so much of when I was a kid, but I used to enjoy watching my grandparents or my parents watch those shows when I was a kid. So just to watch them watching the show, like there was nothing in the world made me laugh more than watching my grandfather watching the Honeymooners. Because everything Jackie Gleason did, he was dying laughing. And this is a guy who was miserable most of the time. He worked at the water plant growing up. He hated his job. He was a bad alcoholic for years and this and that. But boy, when the Honeymooners came on, he would, leg slapping laughing.
Yeah, you saw a different guy.
And I'd be sitting next to him, little Jay, 10 years old, and he's cracking up laughing. And I'm like, man, this must be funny, So I just watched it. I would watch him. I would laugh at him laughing at the TV, I didn't understand what was going on, but I just started watching it. Now the Honeymooners come on at, I want to say 8:30 at night now, and I record them when they come on. And you can ask Becky, I'll sit there and watch, brother. I'm laughing from start to finish. I'm just dying laughing. It's like if I'm watching Fred Sanford. Esther comes in there, dude. I'm laughing from start to finish. My sister and I will send things of Esther chewing out Fred and die laughing. Because those things, it's nostalgia. It's nostalgia. It's things we did as kids, and it's just fun stuff, man. Fun stuff. Last subject with old school, because I know you and I could go on with a podcast for 3 or 4 hours. With us talking.
Well, we've already gone almost 3, so there you
I
go.
think we're over 2. Yeah. Raising kids. I know we talked a little bit about this in the past, and we even on the show earlier we brought up. These kids don't know what a switch is. I sure as hell know what a switch is. And I probably needed it even more than what I got.
Well, here's my take, Jacob. And I'm going to slow it down for a second because I always get emotional when I say this.
Sure.
New school or old school? If you can answer this question, when it came down to it, did I do everything I could to facilitate my kids' dreams? Then you're a parent. If you can't answer that question affirmatively, and you're a man or you're a male, you should cut your fucking throat when you shave.
Yeah.
And I mean that. Because they didn't ask to be here. You made it to adulthood, which means some man sat patiently with you, not you personally, J-Bo, or me.
Right.
But our little knuckleheaded asses until we got straightened out and put us on the right path. And now we're the grown-ass men. And now we're supposed to do that for the next generation behind us. So again, if you can answer affirmatively that you did everything, you took the arrows, you suffered, you sacrificed to facilitate your child's dreams, then you the man. I'm a high five.
You did your job.
And answer that, you should, like I said, you should cut your fucking throat.
Yep.
And I mean that.
Yep.
With everything I have.
Yep.
Because I don't want to hear anybody's excuses. Well, how I know it's mine? I don't give a damn. I don't care whether it's yours. Family ain't always about biology anyway.
Right.
We prove that right now, J-Bo.
Yeah.
Family ain't always biology. And if you're the man you call yourself to be, a child needs a man in his life, not a male.
Right.
So if you say you the man, show me you the man.
Yeah.
Show me you're gonna take care of that child. Show me you're gonna be there when it's not convenient. Show me you're gonna suffer. Show me you're gonna deny yourself so that child has. So you show me that, yeah, I'm gonna shake your hand. You're a man. Now
Absolutely.
you understand what being a man is really about
Yep.
because you're carrying that weight. But you didn't do that. They had to go hunt your ass down and pay child support. Cut your fucking throat.
Yep.
And if you're too gutless to do it, I'll be happy to do it for you.
Yeah.
I got no problem doing it.
I'm with you there. Yep.
So that's my take on new school versus old school because when you and I were kids, there were deadbeat dads, but not
Oh
that
yeah.
many of them. Not that many of them. And you and I both know we got raised by a lot of people that
Oh
weren't
yeah.
family.
Without a doubt.
And they lit our ass up. And
Yep.
they weren't family.
Yep.
And so that's another thing I don't like about new school versus old school because you tell anybody's kids something these days, they want to come after you with a gun instead of shaking your hand and saying, "Thank you for trying to keep my kid on the straight and narrow."
You got that right. Yeah.
You got kids cussing their parents out. You got kids cussing their grandparents out. I draw the line. I don't say anything if they say something, but I draw a hard line at anybody putting their hands on their grandparents or their mom.
Oh man.
Do that in front of me.
No, that ain't gonna happen. Yeah.
Well, it ain't gonna happen twice.
Yep. That
It
ain't
ain't
gonna
gonna happen
happen.
twice.
Nope.
Because before I can stop myself, I'm gonna put my hands around your throat and I'm gonna watch the light bleed out of your eyes.
Right.
And that's the difference between new school versus old school.
Yep.
Because I know for a fact, just like me, you got told some things by your parents that you didn't like at all. Probably
Absolutely.
got mad. Probably even put your hand behind your back and balled your fist up.
Oh yeah.
But you didn't do it. But you didn't do it out in the open.
There were times I thought I could take my dad.
I'm glad you say that there were times I thought I could.
I thought I could.
I'm glad you didn't try.
You know. And
Because you'd have found out something.
oh yeah.
I never had the thought that I would even attempt to take my dad.
Yeah.
I revered my dad. My dad was my hero. My dad never made. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. My dad had polio. He had one leg shorter than
Man.
me.
Okay.
Okay, so he had a structural problem.
Okay.
My dad never made excuses for any reason. Never said poor me. His only thing was get up, get it done.
Right.
Get up, get it done. Everybody thinks Yoda created that. There is no try. There's do or do not. No,
Right.
my dad said that shit in the early '60s. There is no try. Get your ass up and do it or don't do it.
Right.
That was his phrase. George Lucas stole it from him, but no. So that's the difference. If I could synopsize old school rearing, child rearing versus new school child rearing.
Yeah, I can relate
I
to
can
that.
say that
No.
honestly, J-Bo, and I'll close with this because not that I'm fishing for compliments, but
Mhm.
I can look myself in the mirror and I can answer that question. One small thing that you don't know, I turned down two, not one, but two multi-million-dollar promotions because my kids were at a point where they had come into their own. My oldest son was a junior in high school.
Mhm.
I got offered the second highest dollar volume distributorship for Biomed in
Oh wow.
Texas,
Okay.
in Dallas.
Mhm.
I turned it down because my son had just finished his junior year of football and was coming into his own and he was going into his senior year. I wasn't going to move him.
Right.
My younger son comes along, his junior year. He's all state. I got offered the distributorship in San Francisco, my favorite city on the fucking planet. The guy who was there was banking $6.5 million a year.
Mm.
And I thought about that and it took me a microsecond to go, no, I'm not going
Yeah.
to take it.
Yeah.
Because it was all about what was better for my kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a couple of opportunities, not to that degree, and not on that level of on the financial side, but I had to make a choice. One of them was to a nice position offshore, and I'm like, there's no way in hell I can't. There's no way in hell I can do that. And they were in their teen years, early teen years. I'm like, no, 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 no. Then I got a offer to move to Houston because I'm divorced, and their mother had them half the time. I had them half the time. And we, for all intents and purposes, we got along fine. Excuse me. But I had a couple of offers to move to Houston from New Orleans. And the last offer I got is when my youngest one was a junior in high school. And he was really progressing with his drumming and what he was doing academically. And it took me like a second to think, no, I can't do that. There's no way in hell. Yeah, they had offered me to go to Houston again, but after he had graduated high school and he was at LSU. So that was an easy decision then. I think Becky had already started packing the bags before I even got off the phone, because her mother lives in Port Arthur, where you grew up, and her brother lives here in Houston, so she was ready to come here, and it's just my sister and I left because, and I only have one sibling, my younger sister Dawn, and our parents are deceased, of course, but it's just her back in New Orleans now. But we talk every week and stay in touch, and like I said, we'll message each other during the day or in the evening, or and Esther's chewing out Fred on the show. That's the kind of goofy stuff we'll do. And both her children are doing fantastic. Her son just graduated mechanical engineering at UNO recently, and her daughter is in a nursing school at LSU right now. And she graduated top 2 or 3 Dominican high school in New Orleans. So I wish my parents were still alive to see what the grandchildren are doing. Those kind of course, and of course, your two sons, man, that's just phenomenal, off the charts, Terry. I think that's amazing. So, well, man, we did a lot of old school talking here, brother. So the last,
We just touched the surface. We could go on another 4 or 5 hours, but we both be drug overs in the morning.
I think we'll have another podcast though. You never know, man.
I think
I'm definitely going to have you back. You know that.
Yeah, I'll be welcome to come back.
Oh, I love it, and I think we may have to talk to you about being a guest co-host soon, but we'll talk about that on the side.
We'll slide that in. I got one more thing to say. Make sure
Yes, sir.
you tell
Please do.
Becky.
Please.
Make sure you tell Becky how wonderful that beans and rice dish was, because it was disappeared before noon.
Let me ask you one question. This is kind of a question comment. Now, when I tell you we're having red beans and rice, you didn't just have a container of red beans, did you?
I did not.
You had a container of rice too.
I had
because she wants to make sure you get the red beans and the rice, baby. Oh, what do old ladies say? My baby.
Diego, listen, man. Let me tell you something. Number one, you hit the jackpot. But number two,
no doubt,
that woman right there, that woman is old school.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100% old school. 100%.
That woman is old school.
Yeah, I love it. And look, she takes care of things. I don't need to worry about anything.
But like your dad told you, boy, you got one this time.
You got, and with the evil chuckle, if you remember, like I told you, ha ha ha. She ain't gonna put up with none of your shit. And then, as my other buddy would say, she's Mexican, so don't piss her off, brother. I'm not going to say what he said after that. You can just imagine. It had something to do with a knife. That's and Lorena vomit. I'll leave it at that.
No, we don't even want to bring that subject up.
No, we don't, man. So anyway, man, I do want to tell you, but thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And again, I'd love to have you back. And this was just fantastic. I really appreciate you, spending some time. I know you're busy, and sharing your experiences with us. And I love talking the old school thing. We can do that all day long. That would be great. So one little thing I want to say is just everybody watching the podcast, don't forget to subscribe or follow whatever venue you're watching us on, which will be Facebook, YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can kind of big time here, Terry. And it's always entertaining. As a good friend of mine, Kevin Prestonberg in New Orleans, would say, it's free to do so. If it's free, it's me. And I love that quote. And man, again, just thank you so much, Terry. Much appreciated.
My pleasure, J-Bo, believe me.
Okay. And with that, we'll see you on the flip side for another episode of In the Pocket with J-Bo.
I'll see you at the gym in the morning.
You know it, baby.